Hello, and welcome to the final ranking meeting of the 2024 NHL Draft cycle here at Dobber Prospects. We have our scouting team assembled. The vast majority of them were able to make it for this meeting, and we are very excited to kick off this final ranking. It will be a top 128 plus honorable mentions. And let's start things off here by actually just introducing all the team members. So I'm the head scout and the director of European Scouting, Sebastian High, joined by Hadi Kalikesh, the director of North American Scouting, Annie Karvinen, who's covering Finland and Central Europe, David Sod, who is our American scout, Luke Sweeney is our scout for the WHL, Jordan Harris is covering the OHL, Graham Montgomery is our Russian scout, and Colin Hunter is our goaltending specialist. Not able to make the meeting today include Seth Ditchfield, our Swedish scout, Sasha Lagarde, our QMJHL scout, and am I forgetting anybody? Oh, and Wade Messier, our North American crossover scout. So let's kick off this ranking meeting here by introducing the first overall selection. There is not going to be a debate here. It has been clear since about September who this player is going to be, Macklin Celebrini. Hattie, give me the 1 minute scouting report on this player.
Yeah, sure. Best player in the draft. He's average size, but he plays above his weight. Defensively responsible, dynamic offensively, howitzer from the half wall. He's got all the tools to play in the top six today. So I'm excited to see him play in the top six for San Jose. Come fall, it's going to be a great time. And he's in a great situation there to kind of take the reins of this team and become a true bona fide franchise center.
Perfect. And at second overall, there is an equal lack of debate for us. This has become unanimous as the years progressed. We had debates on this slot earlier on in the season in previous ranking meetings, but at this stage of the draft class, it has become clear to us that Ivan Demidov has separated himself from the pack at second overall. He is tremendously dynamic, the best puck handling player that we have scouted in the past three draft classes. He's a tremendous goal scorer. He's a really skilled playmaker. He was way too good for the MHL, and I'm very excited to see what he's able to do against professional competition. Whether it happens next year or not remains a question mark, and while there is a greater possibility of outcomes with this player, with his development, he might cap off as like a second line, high dynamism type of winger. He also has 120-point number one franchise winger upside. And while he will not be playing down the middle at the NHL level, he will bring just about everything you could ask for without playing a pivot role. Now, number three, this is where the discussion opens up. We have a couple candidates in this slot, including Caden Lindstrom, who's been here for us going back to, at the very least, January. Artem Levshunov is another candidate as a top right shot two-way defenseman. Zane Parekh has had a couple third place votes among our scouting staff in our final consensus rankings here. And even Zeev Buyum is in contention, and Konsta Helenius as well. There is a variety of names. Who do we put here at number three?
I think the conversation starts with Caden Lindstrom, but personally, I just think Parekh really showed throughout the OHL playoffs and the end of the Memorial Cup that he's got everything in order to play against the best and work it out. So far in our consensus rankings, we have two Lindstroms. We have you, Sebastian. We have David as well with Lindstrom at 3. We have two Zane Pareks. It's me and Luke, I believe. No, Seth. And then we have two Levshunovs, which doesn't make things easy here. Oh, sorry, it's three Lindstroms.
Yeah, it's three Lindstroms. Yeah.
Three Lindstroms. Yeah. I think that'll have to be the end of that. I don't think we should spend ages debating. I think we should just go for the majority vote, and it really seems like it is Caden Lindstrom, and I'm okay with it. I have him at 4. Seth has him at 4. You know, he's not a player that's outside of the top 5 or anything like that. This is a clear kind of top 5 prospect, and given the consensus, I'd say he's a guy like that. Big, that skilled, that tenacious, that good of a person off the ice, and that much of a pest on it. I don't think we should spend too much time on it. You know.
I agree. I think Lindstrom's been at 3 for us for at least half a year here for good reason. He's a massive power center with skill to boot. He's so intelligent, so creative, a tremendous goal scorer. There's so much to like in his profile, and he's so projectable. I think that the injury concerns might be the one point against him here at number 3, but he's back to training like a day, like 6 days a week, and seems to be back in full shape. So I personally don't have too many concerns on that front at this point.
Cool. Let's lock him in. Any other arguments though before we continue? Perfect. Love the sound of that. So let's move on to number 4. I know we've had Zeev Buium as our top defenseman so far. I really want to bang the table for Zane Parekh. I'm not too comfortable having him outside of the top spot for defenseman in this draft. Everything he does offensively works in the NHL. If the NHL was just power play, he'd be the best prospect in this draft. Like, he's everything he does, the vision, the out flick passes, the ability to manipulate defenders out of spots and kind of find lanes. There's no better offensive defenseman in this draft, but also the OHL playoffs and the Memorial Cup really showed me that he has defensive ability, that he's able to do other things than just bear hug guys along the boards. Like, he's able to get his stick in lanes. He's able to pinch at just the right time. He's not overcommitting. He's not undercommitting. He keeps his gap short. I don't see problems with this defensive game like a lot of others do. And for me, like, this is my guy. I'm banging the table here. But I do want to hear people out on Buium. I know there's a lot of conversation. I know David's just itching. Like, you're on the edge of your seat ready to talk about Buium. Go for it.
Yeah. You know what's more impressive than a good OHL run and a good Memorial Cup run is a fantastic Frozen Four run. And I think the competition that Zeev was able to perform at is second to none in this class. And while Zane Parekh might have more immediate offensive flash, I think there's no question that Zeev is the more complete defender at this point in time.
For sure.
He brings the defensive side of the game. He's fantastic in transition, and he brings plenty of skill that, even though it hasn't reflected in his offensive skill, it has reflected on the scoreboard. I think that while Zane Parekh, I can see a lot of optimism for his offensive upside that can earn him a top pairing spot. Zeev Buium's projectability and reliability, I think, comes into his favor fairly strongly here. And I'm way more confident in his top pairing upside than I am in Parekh's.
I don't know. Zeev Buium, for me, like, I love him. I absolutely adore him. I've adored him all year. For me, they're 4 and 5, or at least at the latest, I'd have Buium at 6 or 7. Like, he's definitely one of the next names up. It's just Parekh is just way too, like, he's got that game breaking offensive ability, that ability to just take control of a shift. For me, I value that a lot. Let's hear some others though. Any other names you want to plug in here in the conversation? Like, I know TJ Ginlett's coming up next. Lukey's right in your range for this kind of spot. I know that Berkeley Catton's also in the conversation here.
Lev Shinov and Ginla would be 2 players that I would be nominating in this range. I think Lev Shinov is too NHL projectable to have outside the top 5. He's going to be a minute muncher for a really long time, and he has a ton of runway. The amount of ground he's been able to cover in his development in the past 2 years is astounding, coming from the U18 level in Belarus to where he is now, which is far from a perfect player. He has mishaps. There's a reason he's not like a consensus number 2 or number 3 guy for us here, but I see so much runway, and I think he's going to be developed as a first pairing potential defenseman, and will get a lot more leeway to make mistakes and to have that type of patience in his development path compared to a player like Zane Parekh. And we're trying to project NHL players here, and that also unfortunately includes the fact that we cannot control these players' development paths, and we have to bank on who NHL teams will also want to invest that time, energy, and money into. And I think that gives Levchinov a bit of a boost. But I don't think he needs to be our number 4 guy, but I don't think he should fall outside our top 5.
I think that if that's the difficult part. So we have 3 defensemen that can plug in here. I do want to give some love to Tijik and as well. I think if we go with 3 defensemen as our next 3, it's not the end of the world. Just a matter of in which order. for me, again, I'm still very much insistent on Parekh being the best defenseman in this draft. For me, just points per game, he's up there. In terms of ability defensively, he's up there as well. I think that, he has a lot to prove there. So just to kind of close things off, we have one Levshunov at 3 in Jordan. We have 2 Zane Parekhs at 3, 1 at 4. And we have Zeev Buyum from what I see here, he's at 4. He's the highest he is 4th in the rankings we have here. So personally, if we go Parekh, Levshunov, Buyum, I'm fine with it. Would we be willing to kind of just plug that in and move on, or does someone have an objection to that?
I would put Buyum over Levshunov at the very least. I can't let that one slide. I do think that Levshunov has a long ways to go, and while you're right, he does project as a minimum-munching defenseman in the NHL. He's got a long way to go to realize that, and I don't think that he's as projectable offensively, at least in the way he's creating it in the NCAA right now. A lot of it is just being the F1 on a relatively strong Michigan State team, and that there's no way that's going to fly at the NHL level. So learning how to bring that offense in a more projectable and reliable, and most importantly, consistent fashion, is going, while also developing that defensive game up, is 2 things I think Levshunov needs to work on, which sets him a little bit behind the offensive powerhouse that is Zane, and also the reliability of Zeev Buyum.
For sure. So
I would want to ask for Jordan's opinion here on especially Parekh and Levshunov, considering that you have Levshunov ranked at number 3, and you've watched more of Zane Parekh than any else of us in this meeting.
Yeah, so my point where I was kind of raised my hand is, honestly, those 3 are like, if I could have had like a tie for 3, like it's all there. We're splitting hairs on I would be splitting hairs, ranking them. I think in our write-up, we should probably just explain how close this tier is. And really, it's about flavor. It's about what you really want. Yes, you can see the upside in all 3. They're at different, spots in their development. I think the most reliable is Buyum for sure. But man, like Parekh is like that guy. Like that could be like an 80-point defenseman, And also then you've got Levshunov, who, like, if all goes well with him, you're looking at like a potentially 6'2", 6'3", 210-pound, like a number 1 defenseman. So like, I don't care which order we go in, but I think we do need to make it known that this is a tier that's very, very, it's incredibly close.
Yeah, I agree. So let's plug in Parekh, Buyum, Levshunov in that order. And this is where Luke comes in, because there's a big conversation to be had here. Tisha Ginla or Berkeley Catton? They're in this.
They're neck and neck for me. They really have been for the past few months. And they offer very different things. I mean, it is kind of like the same conversation we were having with the defenseman earlier. It is really just kind of a difference in flavor, I guess, like kind of Jordan was saying earlier. Whereas Iginla is very projectable. There's pretty much not an element of Iginla's game that does not project to be at least average at the NHL level. And everything he's done over the course of the year just kind of shows that he has that kind of growth mindset, that way of getting better every single game as the months progress. And it's all details too. It's all his habits, his details, even his mechanics are all very, very strong. Whereas Catton has, I mean, like if you want the lazy man's kind of synopsis on him, he was the highest scoring player, draft eligible in the entire CHL this year, and one of the highest that we've seen in the past 10 years at that level as well. There's things to be said about how much he was playing, his usage, how much time and ice he was getting every game, but like he is just dynamic off the rush. He's an incredible playmaker. It's a great shot, great vision. His upside, I would say, is a little bit higher than TJ Ginla's, whereas his fallback game really boils down to just that kind of rush creator kind of thing. Whereas Iginla's is, you can see him playing in an NHL lineup within the next couple of years and being able to contribute immediately. If me personally, I would lean towards Catton. I would not be mad or even, I would not be mad or anything to have Iginla one slot ahead of him. But again, they're very neck and neck for me. And I would personally lean Catton. His dynamic skill set lends itself well, but as well, like if you're an NHL team, and the NHL teams will covet that kind of immediate translatability that you can get out of a guy like Teach Iginla.
For sure.
I'd be banging the table for Iginla personally here. His development trajectory is sky high. I think that while yes, right now, as currently constructed, Berkeley Catton might have the higher ceiling, I am not convinced that will be the case in December. I think that Iginla has developed his game so much and has been adding layers so consistently to expand his offensive game, his off-puck game, his defensive ability as well. The level of engagement is unrivaled in this draft class, at least among top 10 eligible players. And he's the best board battler. He's a ridiculous goal scorer. He's a really talented playmaker, just hasn't been able to really show that skill off too much at the WHL level just yet. The handling's really good. I think he's going to be at the least a complimentary top 6 piece long term, and I think he could be a top 6 driver if he hits his ceiling. I have him right at 5th overall currently. I have him a smidgen above Perek and Bouillon for context. I love this player, but again, Luke, it's your region. I'm happy putting Catton ahead. Catton's my next best draft eligible left on the board here, but I do have, again, a couple of slots ahead, and I've seen him separate himself a little bit over the course of the season.
And I know Hadi also would lean towards Iginla as well, so I think I would be happy to do that as well. And also, it's very important to remember that Iginla is also one of the youngest players in this draft.
Exactly.
Well, which is a huge
also just
thing for his developmental runway. Which there's
for sure. For sure. Let's just roll through this right here. We've got 2 picks left. I think there's 2 clear names at 9 and 10 is Constant Helenius and Sam Dickinson. Annie, I know you're a big fan of Constant Helenius. You've been all year. I'm happy just plugging him here at 9. And Jordan and I are big fans of Dickinson as well. Love the defensive game. Love the engagement, the aggression, the skating. There's so much to work with Dickinson. He might end up being the best defenseman out of this draft. Who knows? There's a big range of possibilities with him.
For sure. I would give Annie the floor for a minute to just rave about Constant Helenius to us, please. We are all ears. You love this player. You've been banging the table for him all season long. This is your final podium to share why he's so awesome.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's anything really left to say for me what I haven't said earlier, but for me, his impact in all 3 zones of the ice is huge, and I see second line center as his floor, and I think there's some potential for him to be a first line center if he can develop his skill set a bit. But I think at this moment his skill set is so balanced, and it's the IQ that allows him to be in so many nights the best player on the ice in playing Liga games. So he's been really impressive for me.
For sure.
For sure.
Now in the next tier, yet again, I do think we have at least one name that is potentially separating himself from the rest of the pack here at number 11, and this is this year's big late riser, Beckett Seneca, the hyper-skilled power forward from the Oshawa Generals in the OHL, who's been a favorite of Jordan's all season long, who saw the vision before any of us knew that it would rise this high late in the draft class. But he's been fantastic. He had an awesome playoff run. Is he the player here at 11th overall?
I think he should be in the conversation. And I gotta say, I'm so glad he it was a gradual progression in the second half of the year, but then it was a massive jump in the playoffs. I wish it happened a bit earlier because I kind of felt like I was on an island for a little while because the flashes were unbelievable, but it just became the norm in the playoffs. It just looks like, when you see a draft +1 player go from 55 points to 110 the next season, or from their draft to draft +1, and you just know that the game has slowed down in their mind, and it's easier now. They're making they're making decisions, or better decisions. They're making quicker decisions, and then it just feels like they're in control. That just seemed like that's what happened with Seneca. It was unbelievable. He's huge, he's fast, he's tenacious on the forecheck. He can rip it. The skill is unbelievable. There aren't many players like Celebrini, of course, Demidov, a few others who, and look, this is also featuring a bug, but their mentality is, I'm going to beat this defender. I'm going to go around or go through this guy. Anyways, the skill is just undeniable. The size is great. He's going to fill out. He's not perfect. And we saw that obviously earlier in the year, but if, you mentioned Iginla and his trajectory, maybe Catton's a little bit ahead of him right now, but the slope of Iginla's curve is more steep. I don't, it's a little bit too early to say, but Seneca hit the slope of that curve is pretty steep too. We just, I just wish there was another month of the season to see what, how long that could go. So we could kind of see what he is really there. But no, he's got to be in contention, at least in this spot for sure.
Yeah, he's my next guy off the board. He's the second best improviser of this draft after Ivan Demidov. And by improviser, I just mean he kind of heads into plays with no set plan, but always does the right thing with the puck to get to the slot, to get a shot off. He's also gotten a bit better at working off the puck, finding space, his projection, his trajectory. And like you said, Jordan, the fact that what was real just flashes in the regular season became kind of the staple of his game in the playoffs is a big, big sign for me that Seneca's headed in the right direction. So for me, I'd lock him in at 11. I don't see anyone else that contends with him at the spot.
Same.
I agree.
Perfect. So him at 11. It opens up a bit here. I do want to throw Cole Eiserman's name here, and I know David's about to roll his eyes, but I swear there's something with this kid. There's more to him. There's just more to him. I know there is.
I have lightened the load on his back a little bit with his fairly respectable U18 tournament, but I still think that there's a good number of guys I would take off the list first. At the top of that list would be Michael Brandsegg-Nygard for me.
Me too.
I watched a bit of the Allsvenskan playoffs that he was in, and he was just otherworldly. I think he had one of the best Allsvenskan playoffs of any DY player since Elias Pettersson. Genuinely remarkable. I think that in this range as well, he brings the most immediate NHL translatability that we will find. And I think this makes a lot of sense to someone right outside the top 10 range. Honestly, I could see a team like New Jersey just foaming at the mouth that he was going to be available at 10, because that's somebody you can just slot immediately into the lineup in 1 or 2 years, and they can play top 6 or they can play top 9. You're happy wherever. The one player I keep coming back to with him is Nino Niederreiter. And I'm a big fan of Niederreiter, so therefore I am a big fan of Nygard.
Yeah, I'm completely with David on MBN. I went back and watched some more tape just to be sure that I like him as a top 15 prospect, because that hasn't been consensus all season long. And the more I see, the more I like him, closer to 10 to 15. So having him here at 12 is fair. I still have some questions about Cole Eiserman being the next player off our board here. I still see a couple other players who have shown flashes that are about as bright as Eiserman's shown this season, but with more consistency and more projectability in their games. Even players like Anton Salayev, Trevor Connolly, I think are in conversation in this range. I'd even throw in Igor Chernyshov. But I know that there is some love for Eiserman in this meeting. It's just been very, very difficult this season, and the amount of habits in his game that aren't just not projectable, but could be completely deficient at the NHL level is a significant cause for concern. And even if he hits his highest of upsides, which is scoring 55 goals a season, and being a negative overall value in terms of being a non-factor defensively and not being able to drive offensive play, not being a factor in transition. Is that a player that I want to spend that high of a pick on? Maybe, and that's a good case scenario. So I have a lot of questions with Yzerman still.
I will say, having watched them both, just having watched them both extensively all year, I will say that it's not a conversation for me anymore. Yzerman is well above Conley in terms of upside and in terms of overall. Like there have been moments, especially earlier on in the year, where I did not like, and I've talked about it. I hated watching Cole Yzerman at times. As the year went on, I got more and more confident in to at least put in a slight amount of effort off the puck, his ability to drive the net, his ability to move off the puck. Like, he's not just a shooter. This is a player who is one of the best at finding space in the offensive zone in this entire draft. On top of that, he drives the net. He makes efforts to take opponents out of lanes with his net drives. I don't have as much of a concern with Yzerman as others do. I understand that this is a prospect who needs a lot of work, but he also has some game-breaking abilities. And at 13, for me, like, Connolly's abilities are great. They're not game-breaking. Yzerman has a game-breaking shot, game-breaking off-puck movement. For me, he's a no-brainer at 13. This is the lowest, I'd go as low as 15 maybe. I'd argue perhaps Igor Chernyshov on top of him, Anton Salayev perhaps, but those are the only two names I'd consider outside of Yzerman here.
I am not letting Cole Yzerman
Those are two names.
I am not letting Cole Yzerman get ranked without me saying that Teddy Stiga is just strictly better than him in pretty much every factor of the ice. I have Stiga in my top 15 in this spot, actually, if not at 12, actually. Mm-hmm. For me, watching both of them on the ice within like 2 minutes of each other is night and day. While Cole Yzerman is all about finishing chains and ending plays, Stiga is the ultimate facilitator. And I pine so much towards that side of style of play that I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things that needs to go right for Cole Yzerman to even be like a line 2 30-goal guy, that it scares me a lot. I have mellowed on him, which is saying a lot because I was probably his biggest hater here. But I mean, 13 it's rich for me. It's very rich.
I would introduce the two Russian names then, and I'll bring Graham into that conversation. But both Igor Chernyshov and Anton Salayev for me are players that I'm more confident in projecting to the NHL in valuable roles than Cole Yzerman. Anton Salayev is going to be a top 5 draft selection. I'd be pretty shocked if he isn't. He's going to be given a lot of opportunities to develop into a top 4 piece. Yes, we see a lot of flashes of Rasmus Ristolainen in his game, Tyler Myers in his game, where there are some really, really poor decisions. But the tools, the elite level skating, he's a top 3 skater in this draft, and he's a freaking machine. He's a truck out there. He has the longest range that I've scouted for defensemen in the past couple drafts as well. And yes, there are a bunch of questions, whether it be the offensive value, the on-puck ability, the hesitation in his game at times. But even if you just develop him into your prototypical shutdown second pairing guy, and he doesn't hit that first pairing upside, I think he has a really strong fallback game as a pure defensive piece. And I think that's a more valuable piece than a second line pure sniper in Cole Yzerman. So that'd be my argument for Salayev over. And I think Chernyshov brings less goal scoring, but still good goal scoring than Cole Yzerman, with a ton of value on the defensive side of things and in transition. But Graham, could you maybe talk us through these two players for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. My preference, excuse me, would be Chernyshov over Salayev. Largely just because Salayev kind of, I don't know, I was really high on him at the beginning of the year, and then the more and more I watch him, the more I just kind of question him. I mean, I agree that he has a really solid fallback game as a defensive defenseman, but at this range in the draft, I think personally I would just prefer to go with somebody with a bit more upside, and that's definitely Chernyshov. I love Chernyshov's compete as well. I think he's one of the harder working players in the draft. and that is something that I've really come to value really highly this year, and I think that reflects in my rankings. So for me, I would go Chernyshov. I do have, I have Chernyshov and Salayev 2 picks apart, so I'd definitely be open to them going back to back, or potentially Chernyshov, Yzerman, because I also have Yzerman right there with those guys.
If I were to choose, I would go Chernyshov, Yzerman, Salayev as well.
Let's do that then. If even David is voicing Yzerman over somebody.
If we get to that point, you gotta rip the hand off or cut the line there.
Yeah.
I think he hates Salayev more than he hates Yzerman.
I hate a lot of
I'm very glad he's not the Russian scout, because we would have heard only Salayev rants all season long. But that wraps up another little tier here, and things open up a lot more widely now. I think we're getting into some players with a lot more question marks in their games, but still a bunch of upside. I'm thinking guys like Carter Yakimchuk, Trevor Connolly, even Liam Greentree is a potential guy in here. I'm a very big proponent of Michael Hage as well, and I know Annie has him ranked inside her top 10. He's awesome. He's super skilled, great tools, really intelligent, also a very, very upwards trajectory in his development. He's a guy I would love to introduce in the next couple picks here. But do we have
my next guy off the board.
Anybody banging the table? I am so big on him. Like please.
I'm not going to fight against them. I'm not going to fight against him. I would have Stiga up here, but I'm not fighting it.
You shouldn't. He's just there's nothing he can't do offensively. I think that his ability to transition the puck, to facilitate play, to finish plays, his ability to draw opponents into him, open space. He has a great understanding of how to create offense for his teammates. On top of that, he's worked a lot in his two-way game this year, and you can see it in the results. He's a player who puts in second efforts on the back check, was able to get back to make plays. He has fantastic skating. I think he's got a fantastic foundation. For me, a better foundation than Trevor Connolly to make his game work at the NHL level. Connolly has a lot of room to add to his game, and there's a lot of concerns both on and off the ice. With Michael Hage, I don't have much of a worry. I think that he's a pretty safe, pretty projectable guy. And right now, I have him above Liam Greentree, who I've kind of soured on as the years went on. I still want to get Greentree in the next pick or two. But I'm open to discussion on that. If someone has Yakimchuk or Frey or those kinds of guys, or even Artemanov above him, I'm fine with it. But Michael Hage for me is the next guy off the board.
Yeah, I'd want Yakimchuk in pretty soon afterwards as well, especially with Salayev off the board. I personally have Yakimchuk ahead of Salayev on my personal board, and it's a pure upside bet. If you're betting on Salayev's upside, you can just as well bet on Yakimchuk's upside as a 6'3" physical right-handed defenseman with probably the best, some of the best puck skills among the defensemen in this draft. Maybe the best shot of all the defensemen in this draft. Just high offensive upside. Defensive upside is questionable, but the toolkit's there, but basically nothing else. But if Salayev is going in this range, I would like to hear Yakimchuk's name pretty
for sure. Thereafter. My tidbit on him is really simple. I like defensemen who find simple solution to complex problems. He finds complex solutions to simple problems, and it's really annoying. Like he'll complexify situations where I think the right play is just an outlet pass to a fully open winger, but it'll like dangle a second guy between the legs, pass, saucer across, and it's like, what is going on?
Some nights he's just trying to get on Sports Center, like honestly.
Yeah, like essentially.
That's his whole goal. But no,
but the upside's there. You're fully right.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased, but every time I think of Yakimchuk, I think to his D-1 tape on the Canadian U18 team. And I just remember how he was genuinely the best defenseman on that team. And
that was as much team.
It was a weak team. It was a very weak team, but I don't know. Like I still have that positive memory from him, and I if we can capture that essence of Yakimchuk a little bit more, I think that there's a lot more optimism to be had with him.
For sure.
All right, perfect. We'll lock in Carter Yakimchuk there. So we have 3 more picks here in the top 20, and I think there are cool names that need to get in here. Who?
Connolly and Greentree have to be in here, right?
Agreed. I think
Mm,
yes.
Green Tree
They
over
do.
Connolly for me. Green Tree over Connolly. And I'll make the argument. I will make the argument. Liam has some of the best hockey sense in this draft. He understands offense so extremely well. And even though I've soured on his ability to kind of do things with that hockey sense due to a kind of lower end ability to kind of make passes through lanes, to find guys across the ice, that kind of thing, I still think that he's one of the best smaller ice facilitators in this draft. He's an absolutely crappy skater. Like, I'm not going to lie, his skating like hurts to watch, but I think he can work on that. I think that, especially with the way development teams have been kind of investing in skating recently, I don't think it's out of question that we see Green Tree become at least an average NHL skater. He's not right now by any means, but I think that he can get there.
I'm not overly comfortable dropping a potential dynamic 100-point first-line winger past 18th overall in Trevor Connolly.
I don't know.
Like, we have questions. No, like he's 18th for a reason, right? Like he's below other players that we have massive questions on, in Salayev and Yzerman, and players with far more conservative projections in terms of upside. But Liam Greentree has about as many on-ice question marks as Trevor Connolly does, in my opinion, and I don't think that the payoff is anywhere near as high as it is with Connolly.
Yeah, I think Connolly is a narrative where it's all about the narrative that you choose to follow. You can see a lot of divisiveness come from that. I feel like similarly to somebody like Zane Parekh, he's like all offense and all I want to do it myself. He'll abuse his raw speed in every single point in time, but is that just him being selfish? He can be cerebral and like make an insane looking pass, but is he taking that pass because he thinks it makes him look good, or is it because he just doesn't believe in anybody else to make the plays that he thinks that only he can do? I find that like there is no player I would want to interview more in this draft than Trevor Connolly, because really I think his entire perspective like falls on what kind of a person he is, what kind of a player he is. I think that for that reason, like I can see him at 25, I can see him at 13. Like it's a really wide range for him. I can live with kicking him down, but I can't deny the upside as well. So if we're placing him here, sure. I mean, it's gonna really hurt me when Teddy Stiga falls outside the top 20.
He will not.
Okay,
Stiga's going to be at 20, and I will be banging the table for him there too.
Good. And
Above
then,
Frey?
okay.
Above Basha?
I would put them.
Ooh,
I would put
Solberg.
Oh.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's reasons here we can kick Connolly down
That's
the board.
true.
Yeah. No, for me, I think that there's a gap between the two. Like, again, I've watched these two guys the entire year. They're two of the prospects I've watched the most this year. I have more question marks with Connolly than with Greentree. Like his skating, sure. His long range playmaking, sure. Apart from that, I'm not concerned. He's a great finisher, a great off puck mover, a great small area facilitator, one of the smartest prospects in this draft. With Connolly, yes, the off ice question marks, but the on ice question marks are massive and are kind of related to the off ice question marks in terms of when I watch him, I'm like, what kind of person is this? Like, kind of like David was saying, a lot relies on how he thinks, why he's making the decisions he's making on the ice. For me, the answer is clear with Connolly. With Greentree, I never have any questions about his decision making. It's always the right decision. He's really good at what he does.
Okay, I will say I do want to get Stian Solberg into our top 20.
In our top 20,
so we have 3 more slots. We have 3 more slots left. I want one of those to be Stian Solberg. He's like the big European riser in this draft class, and I went back and watched another like 5 or 6 games, both internationally and league tape, in the past couple of weeks, and I've become very bullish on him. I have him ranked 18th overall. I think that he has a really salivating combination of high upside and a high floor. He's tremendously mobile. He's vicious. He's so physical, so strong, and also penalties. He's really selective with his moments when he chooses to step up and defend the rush. I think the puck skills are unheralded and very strong, and there's a lot of growing room for him as a puck mover with the puck on his stick. The passing game definitely needs some work, but he's moving over to Sweden. I think with I forget which team exactly he's transferring to in Sweden, but he'll be playing in the SHL next season against. But he'll be playing against high-end competition.
Sorry,
it might be Färjestad or
it is. Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure you're right.
It is.
Yeah.
Because NBN is going to Skellefteå.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right.
Got it. I wasn't sure if it was the other way around, but yeah. So he's going to the SHL, very strong league. I think he's going to progress really well there. It's a great team, a great organization, and he won't be having to play 30 minutes a night against pro competition for a season, which will help him game a little bit rather than just being triple shifted all the time. And he's a guy I like a ton.
For sure. Watching him handle NHLers at the Men's Worlds was an eye opener for me. Like he's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Above Frey? Are we sure about that?
Yes.
That's locked in.
Yes.
That's okay.
I
so
honestly
18, 19,
like
20 is
the one stipulation I have is that like both Stiga and Frey outside of the top 20 is really wounding me. I would like sacrifice one of them to push Connolly down to 21.
Wow. Okay.
I'm okay with Stiga over Connolly.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
okay with it.
Stiga's
okay.
the
Let's lock that in.
Solberg at 19 though. Solberg 19
okay.
and then Stiga 20 and then Connolly 21 and then Frey 22.
Yep.
Sure.
Do you have any objections to that?
I've kind of soured on Alphonse Frey a tiny bit. I have questions. With Frey, it's kind of like it's about turning those flashes into consistent elements.
Yeah.
I think the concerns a lot of people have with Aron Kiviharju turning into Eric Brandstrom, I have concerns about Alphonse Frey turning into Eric Brandstrom, even though he's taller.
Or Niels Lundqvist.
I think so. I can see it. But I still think that of every single draft eligible we've seen this year, I have not seen a defenseman that more accurately archetypes as like a quarterback from the defensive end. He gets to his spots insanely well. He knows exactly when to make the very, very high end play and when to keep it simple. His decision making is really, really exceptional. I genuinely mourn that he was not given power play 1 on the Swedish U18 team, because every time he was on the power play, he was carrying that unit. The 4v3 versus the 4-on-3 versus Team Canada is fresh off my mind, with Alex Zetterberg hitting the post twice and Bernstrom hitting the crossbar. All of those times, Alphonse Frey should have gotten points on. He was. I genuinely think that on a better Swedish team, or on just not Bakio's J20 team, we would have more exposure to what he's capable of, because he's just not been like overtly tested or given the opportunity to limit test. So I think because of that, the I don't know, the perception of his ceiling is a little bit lower than it could be, but I have no doubts in my mind that this is like at the very least a solid number 3 guy.
I have doubts about the floor. I think that at the ceiling is a number 2 defenseman and really entertaining, really intelligent. I also think there's a chance he ends up as a number 6 and number 7. I think there's a wide range of possible outcomes with this player. I've soured isn't the word. I've cooled on my projection of him a little bit. I went back and watched some more tapes. And look, the strengths are the same as always. He's so intelligent. He's so creative. He's so dynamic with the puck. The mobility is a massive strength. We've also seen, like, not to take like the typical Sportsnet argument here, but like we've watched the playoffs this season, and Niels Lundqvist was not the player making the difference for Dallas. And I think that Niels Lundqvist is not a bad comparable for Alphonse Frey. And I still like him as like a top 25 guy. My range for him has shifted a bit to like 15 to 25, but I'm also very okay having him at the tail end of that range. If we're talking about European defensemen in this range, there are 2 other guys that could come to mind. One is a player that Seth is really high on that I like a lot too, obviously, and Dominic Bedinka. Seth's range for him is 15 to 20, and we're at 22 here now. And Bedinka's super projectable, playing good minutes against SHL competition. That would be an option here. Or if you want to take the massive home run swing on upside, we have Adam Jiricek sitting there as well. So there are a couple other names apart from Frey.
I would wait a lot on Adam Jiricek. I have a lot of questions. It's not just related to the physical game. I've watched a lot more of him recently, and I let's just focus on the guys that I think like need to go in the next few picks. Nikita Artemonov is ranked 12 to 18 by Graham. I think we should respect that. We're at 22 now. I think that he should be one of the next off the board. Andrew Basha, I think we're at the tail end of his range. I don't think he should slip any further than this. He's a fantastic player with a high floor and room to add to his game. One of the hardest workers on the in this draft, on top of having high-end playmaking, good goal scoring. Like, he's got a great foundation and room to add. So for me, Basha outranks Frey, outranks for me Artemonov personally. But
me too.
Yeah, so I think Basha and Artemonov
on the board too.
Yeah, I think Basha and Artemonov should be the next guys. Then we get into conversation about Frey. For me, Parasak. I know not everyone's going to agree, but
I would say Badinka over or at least in that range. Again, Seth, like our regional scout for Sweden, has his range going 15 to 20, and that's something I want to respect, especially considering that he's not here in this meeting to voice his arguments for that take, and considering that I'm very much in the same perspective that Badinka has been going underrated by most outlets, all playing excellent minutes against SHL competition. I think he'll be drafted higher than public outlets have him ranked, and I wouldn't want to drop him too much past like that 25. Like 25 would be the absolute floor for both Frey and Badinka, in my opinion.
Listen, that would mean we have Sacha Boisvert and Tarek Parasak outside of the top 25, and I'm personally not too comfortable with that.
With Parasak, like I don't know.
I don't see what you see in him, honestly. I don't have him in my top 64.
Oh, wow. Oh my god.
I don't see it. I really don't see it.
We're going to have to meet in the parking lot.
Almost feels like
that is offensive.
To Hadi, honestly.
Yeah. I
honestly, like the things that I've liked about Parasak and the things that I've had knocks against him for have been pretty much the exact same things all year. There's no denying his smarts. He's got good skill. He's a good finisher. But he does have glaring weaknesses in his game that I think are covered up by the fact that he plays for one of the best teams in the entire CHL with an incredibly deep forward group and has an absolute plum role on, again, one of the better power plays in the CHL when it's on fire. Like he doesn't have to do a whole lot in transition at all. And I worry about whether or not he's going to be able to get into those same positions at higher levels without having that ability to be like that separating speed, that ability to be a really viable entry target or entry carrier. And I just don't see a lot of those things being on the table for him. So like I said, my qualms have always been what they have always been, and his strengths have stayed the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for me as a rookie. I know it's Prince George. He worked his way up to that top 6. He earned his spot there, and beyond that, it's just he's a poor skater. He's always getting to spots early. He's always the first on pucks. And as a rookie with Prince George playing against even the top teams in the WHL, that didn't change. I'd be surprised if that changes once he reached the pro level. I know that his skating isn't the best. I still am convinced that skating can be worked on better than other things, and he's already doing the right things in order to get to the right spots. A player this clunky shouldn't be getting to spots this well. Shouldn't be beating the most mobile defenseman in the WHL to the puck on retrievals. He shouldn't be beating players to the slot, and he does. He understands how to kind of separate, get lost, find space, and for me, that's priceless.
Well,
like for me, I just remember Jet Lachenko. We do have to. Yeah.
I think you kind of touched on one of the flaws with Parasak, and it's that he's out muscling a lot of these more mobile defensemen. And when he gets to higher levels, he's got to not only add to his skating, but also add to his strength. And as a 5'11", I believe, not even 200-pound projectable.
He's not out muscling guys. Like he's not out muscling guys. He's just beating.
He's beating them, but he's got puck control skill, right? Like he's got body positioning, and it's going to be even harder to get that body positioning as it goes down the line. I just find it harder and harder to see, like, if Periscak does this now, will he be able to do it in the AHL? And I think that even in that situation, in Prince George, if we were to place other players in his role, they would do just as well. If you put Jetlachenko on the Prince George second line first power play, is he able to drop 130? I don't see why not.
If we had if Ryder Ritchie was on the Prince George Cougars, he might be in our top like 18. I honestly feel that.
Really?
Way. I think that I've come around on Ritchie a lot. I don't have him here. Like there is undeniable benefit to playing in, like, developmentally, to playing for a good team, which Tarek Parasak has capitalized on. But it's just like that team is so good. Like Zach Funk, Andre Beher, Riley, like it's
Riley Height, Cone Zimmer, the list goes on and on.
Yes,
it goes on. Like exactly, you can talk all day. Like even Hudson Thornton, like, but
yeah,
the point is he gets a lot of attention taken away from him, where that time and space that he's getting as a result is just like going to evaporate the minute that he gets to the next level. And Joel Henderson at Puck Preps brought up a really interesting point about him, which I do agree with, which is he's a rookie this season for a reason. He didn't play with Prince George last year for a reason, which is because his skill set didn't really make him available to play in their bottom six. He is a guy who kind of needs to play in a top six to be really effective. He needs to play with other players who can bring up his game and allow him to get that space. And I don't see him having those opportunities at every level.
That was the case last year. Like I'll agree that was the case last year. Tarek Parasak's become one of the better penalty killers in the WHL. Like he's really good at what he does.
Yeah, he is. But penalty killing is not the same as even strength defense and even strength.
Yeah.
Being able to separate guys off pucks is even strength as well. We're having a very lengthy conversation about
it. I know. Let's move this on.
I feel like we can sum it all up with Paraskak is very smart, but how much can smart carry you?
Yeah. I wouldn't slip him too far. The latest I'll go is like 29-30. But I do want to have Sacha Boisvert in here. I think he has to be in here.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say Boisvert, then Frey as the next two players.
Yeah.
And I think that we're getting into and Adam Jiricek. Yeah. Like I would have to put my foot down in this late first round range. I know, Annie, you've actually risen your stock on Jiricek a significant amount for this final meeting, and the upside is significant. He is a violent and very mobile in terms of his edge work and agility, even though the stride mechanics aren't always the prettiest type of defenseman, and he has so much more room to grow into his frame. Yes, the knee injury is something to worry about, but if he hits his full upside, we're talking about a number 3, maybe even number 2 defenseman. But Annie, could you maybe talk us through his game for 30 to 32 seconds to a minute?
Yeah, he's well, we don't have much of game tape because of his injury. I've recently watched some of his Linka Gretzky games, and I think he has got offensive upside quite a bit, and maybe not as much as his older brother, but I think if the upside hits, he could be possibly, like you said, 2 or 3 demon, and his physical game is really, really strong, and I see, even if the offensive upside doesn't hit, I think he can be effective, like number 3 to 5 defenseman, shutting down the best players of the opponent. So that's why I'm so high on him.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we plugged in Jiricek here at 27th overall after going with with Bovair and Frey at 25 and 26. At 28, we finally plugged in Tarek Parasak for Hattie's sake. Then at 29 and 30, we've got two OHLers that we have grown on a bunch this season. Really projectable players in Jet Luchenko and Cole Baudouin. A little bit different stylistically. Cole Baudouin is your prototypical shutdown, bottom six, like third line center type of player. Really good net front presence, can score you some big goals. Jet Luchenko is also very projectable. They're both also athletic freaks. Absolutely like machines in terms of their strength and agility and speed. And Luchenko also brings an element of playmaking, which I think gives him a type of second line upside that gives him a slight edge over Cole Baudouin. But Jordan, talk us through these two players for a little bit.
Yeah, I have them. Where do I have them? I have them 23 and 24. So this is very. I'm very okay with this. I have them one, behind each other. Like they're both athletic freaks. I've read stories of Baudouin's like conditioning and strength just being like off the charts good, like comparable to like 24-year-olds.
He can deadlift 400 pounds. That's absurd.
That guy's a freak.
Like, what the hell?
The skating, and that's why I feel so confident that the speed will get there with his skating. Because if he's got the dedication to be where he is right now in other areas of his game, there's no reason why he's not going to be able to get there as a skater. He's never going to be like a burner, but he'll definitely get to at least average. Luchenko can fly. He's also a physical freak in different ways. I'm going to give the edge to Luchenko because I think that he could play a little bit higher up in the lineup if all breaks well for him versus Baudouin. But man, they were so crucial and so important on that U18 team that had very, very little depth down the middle, just because they didn't get Lindstrom, they didn't get Catton, and obviously Celebrini wasn't going to go to that event because he's too good for that event. So
he's playing at the men's.
Well, yeah, he was going to be playing at the men, then they took him home for that draft lottery or whatever. So yeah, anyways, but it's man, Luchenko and Baudouin, very, very projectable players, and I have no issues with them going here.
Perfect. So that tops at 30. So we have two final spots left for our first round, and I'd be very curious to hear who you guys can actually bring to the table here, players that you really do want in the top 32. Two names that come to mind for me specifically would be Linus Eriksson as a like Cole Baudouin stylistic type of 3C. He could also fall as low as like 40 or 45 though, so I'm not going to bang the table for him. But I'm also going to propose Cole Hudson here. I'm not convinced I'm going to win this debate, but I love this player's upside. He is so intelligent. He's so nifty with the puck on his stick. He was dominant in World Championships. He was the top point producing draft eligible player, period. Not just among defensemen, players. And on top of that, I thought he progressed really nicely this season. His defensive game wasn't as big of a black hole nearly at the end of the year as it was at the beginning. I think that his skating needs to take some strides. But he's going to BU, a program that he's already going to be familiar with Lane Hudson having gone there, and they know what to expect in a player of his ilk. I think that his development is only going to rise higher from this point onwards, and I would be very happy to have him in the top 32, but I would also be interested to hear the counter arguments, and I'm sure there will be a decent amount of them here.
Yeah, I know. Listen. I like him. I like the idea of Cole Hudson. I don't like the realistic outcomes that are possible for him. Now, Hudson isn't Cole Hudson isn't Lane Hudson. There are different players. They have different ways of creating offense. With Cole, it's really very much like access to the offensive zone blue line, slow down, open up lanes, and just be the best at. He's the best at opening up lanes after entering the offensive zone among defensemen in this draft. Like, I'm including everyone here, including Zane Parekh. He's so good at that one particular thing, but it's just there isn't enough skating-wise. There isn't enough defensively. There isn't enough physically. There isn't enough in terms of his pure shooting ability, in terms of his kind of longer-range playmaking ability, outlet passes, breakout passes. I'm not sold. I have too many questions around that, and that's why he was so good at the U18 Worlds, is because the play style of USA was really very much built upon that idea of accessing the offensive zone, slowing down your surroundings, and finding lanes. That's what made him so good. That's what made him produce so well. I'm just not sold that a team can build around Hudson, and I don't think he can necessarily play a complementary role as well as other defensemen that are available here.
Yeah,
David?
I follow that. I follow where you're coming from. I have Cole Hudson at 32nd on my personal list, and that's just because I don't think that there's, at this point in the draft at least, much better when it comes to betting on upside. I think that there's like a handful of guys that I would personally put above him at the moment. I've been a big proponent for Lucas Pettersson all year. Luke Misa, Linus Eriksson was touched on earlier as well. But what Cole Hudson after that, there's not much else when it comes to like really good offensive, like boom swingy takes. And that's what put Cole Hudson over the board for me. Or
Ryder
above the second
Ritchie
round.
could fall into that category in terms of a boom type of offensive player. He was
I think
playing in a
Ritchie
weak
is a
program
lot
this
safer.
season.
I think
And-
Ritchie is.
I
don't
see
know.
it, but
Yeah.
he's one of the remaining WHL guys I would look at for this slot, but I can also see him going lower. I actually don't. I've become a lot. It's actually funny to think back on how high I've banged the table for Yakimchuk at this one as well, but with about how I'm
Yeah.
going to ride for Ryder Ritchie. But
Go on.
Actually, that was unintentional. But I think his fallback game is a lot stronger than I realized, and I think he's a lot smarter than I'd given him credit for. I don't think he's a particularly quick decision maker, but the decisions that he does make are usually the right ones. He just has a really good feel for the game. Like he understands what he's supposed to do, even if it does take him like a half second longer to get it. And his tools are some of the best in the first round. I mean, he's like skating, shot, hands, playmaking, effort level when it's there. It comes and goes a little bit, but he has all the flashes of a guy who could very capably fit into a middle six just off of tools alone.
Yeah.
I don't think he's as much as a home run big swing as people would make it out to be, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say if Ryder Ritchie's picked above both Marquez and Brunick, I will be a bit sad. But I'm not opposed to it. It's just that I like those guys very much. I think they have translatable tools that will work at the next level. For me, the next off the board would be Marquez. I do think we should talk about Aron Kiviharu though, because Annie has him at 22 to 30, and we're at 31. I think that, especially with Annie having him above Hemming, I think that would be the next guy off the board. What do you think, Annie?
Yeah. I have Kiviharu that high because I'm betting on his upside and the high IQ. My philosophy is that when players got an exceptional IQ, he will find the ways to translate to next level of competition. So that's why I'm so high on Kiviharu, but I don't mind if he slips to the second round. It's all right, but I think the potential and upside is quite big with him.
I have a lot of questions with TBRU in terms of NHL projection. I really want him to be a thing because he is so intelligent. He is so slippery. He's such a good passer. But beyond just the injury and the missed time, I think that there's if we're talking about like Niels Lundqvist as an Alphonse Frey comparison, we're talking about like a Victor Soderstrom type of Kiviharu comparison, where I'm not convinced how it's going to work at the next level. And I think the first round is a little bit rich for my blood, but I think that like if he's one of the first picks of the second round, I'm fully okay and on board with that. I just think first round, a little bit too much for my personal liking, but we also haven't really heard any massive arguments for any other players in the first round. I think Miguel Marquez got a bit of a push there from Hattie, but does anybody else have a player that they really want to push for? Like Charlie Ellick could be like a projectable defenseman. Is someone going to back him? Are there other names that we haven't mentioned just yet? Linus Eriksson and
Luke,
stuff.
what are your thoughts on Harrison Brunick or Brunick or whatever? I can't remember. I don't know how you pronounce it.
It's pretty good.
Brunicky, yeah. I do. I like him a lot, though I'm considerably lower on him than Hadi is.
Gotcha.
I do like him. Like, he's got great tools. He's smart, and I think he does a lot of like pretty much everything really well. It's just I don't know if because he has a lot of offensive tools that he flashes at the WHL level, but it's a certain point it's like offensive players gotta get the puck in the net a little bit more often than a guy like he does.
Sure.
I mean, it's at a certain point like he was being outpaced offensively by Taryn Smith, who has a lot more projectable offensive game in a lot of ways, in my opinion. But Brunicky, I like him a lot. I would still maybe lean a little bit more towards Alec because I think he is more projectable. But it's also a much safer pick. Brunicky does have very high upside, but Alec would be where I would lean personally. But yeah,
it's funny. I have Alec
I would
at 31 and Brunicky at 32. So right around the change.
For sure. The thing with me with Brunick is like he's kind of been pegged in as an offensive player who doesn't produce. Like I've been a big fan of his rush defending all year. Like that's been the biggest part of his game that I've liked. His gaps are really good. His skating is amazing, and he uses it extremely well. The worry I have is the same as yours in the sense that not only is it flashy in terms of his offensive skill, like it comes and goes in flashes, but when it goes, it's in key moments in games. Like he struggles to produce in key moments. So I wouldn't make a big push for him at 31, but I do want to have him in kind of the next 6-7 picks for sure. The guy I would push for, like Sebastian said, is Marquez. Like that's the guy who I think, for me, above Richie, the engagement, the awareness, the intensity, the goal scoring, the passing, like he's got a lot of really key tools that'll work. He relies a bit too much on the rush for me. But once he kind of figures out the cycle game, he's going to be able to unlock that part of his game really well because the intensity's there, the awareness is there. He has really good reaction times as well. Like I think he can translate his game to the cycle game fairly well. But as he stands right now, like I've gone from having him in my early 20s to having him in my early 30s. That's about where I'd have him.
Okay. Let's slot in Marquez then at 31 because we've been stuck here for a little bit now. And for the final pick of the first round, I'm just going to leave the decision up to Luke. Charlie Ellick or Ryder Ritchie?
I would go Ritchie for sure. I just think I would even put him ahead of Marquez personally, though I think Hadi has a stronger opinion on the two. It's for everything I said before. I think that there is a better B game than we give him credit for there.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
He's just a gamer. He's a gamer, man. He plays the game. He knows how to do it.
Let's do it that way then. So we have Miguel Marquez at 31. Then we have Ryder Ritchie at 32, wrapping up our first round. And then we have a couple players that we've been talking about that we are just going to start slotting in here at the top of the second. We've already talked at length about them. Can we start off with Charlie Ellick as a projectable, mobile, physical, two-way defenseman at 33? First pick in the second round, and then followed up with the antithesis as a blue liner in Aaron Kiviharju as a high IQ, mobile, great passing defender to start off our second round at 33 and 34.
100%. I'm fine with that.
Perfect.
All right. Let me do that. By the way, regarding Lucas Pettersson, David, I know you really like him. I have a lot of trouble seeing him become anything more than a third liner. I don't think the skill's there. He's very linear. He's very linear in terms of his playmaking ability.
He struggles at low pace. He struggles to produce or create when he's not going at top. Like he's reliant on his speed to create gaps in defensive structures, and that's not going to translate to the NHL super smoothly. That said,
he's an accelerator.
He's an accelerator fully. Sure. I do think that the defensive impact is good enough that he will have a decent fallback game as a bottom six, energy, quick, like depth type of scorer. But I'd be when we're at 40, let's start talking about him maybe a little bit earlier. But that's kind of the range for me. The Swede I want to get in way before Pettersson is Linus Eriksson, and I'd be happy to plug him in here at 35. Because this is a really projectable two-way center type of player, great defensive impact. He's a true line connector, is able to elevate the players around him, and I've loved everything I've seen of him in the past months. And at 36, let's just plug in Harrison Brunick. We talked about him at length already. He did not quite crack our first round, but we can plug him in here at 36. And now things open up a little bit. We have a couple players that I know multiple of us are fans of. One player that is not going to get quite as big a push as he may have because Seth isn't in this meeting is Leon Mugli as a really intelligent two-way defenseman. His range for Mugli is 20 to 25, and we're at 37 now. I would need to respect his work and respect his favorite player in this draft class. I wouldn't really want to let Mugli fall too much further than this, even though my own personal range for him is 40 to 60. I still have some question marks of what he could really become at the NHL level, but he's very intelligent and he will play in some capacity. The upside is dark, but I think he will be a player in some capacity. Emil Hemming at 38 would also be an option for us here. And we've had questions about this player all season long, but he has been able to show us two very specific things: his high-end goal-scoring ability and his development of a fallback game as a check-in forward. He has a decent amount of strength and power. He's not a bad skater or bad passer or bad puck handler. He hasn't necessarily elevated his upside in any significant way this season either, but he's a relatively interesting player in this early second round range, right?
Yeah, I agree. His tools are great. It's some questions with his hockey sense, but otherwise, I'm happy at him at 38.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
We'll go with that then. Who are you going for, Hattie, here?
I was going to say the next three guys I want to talk about: Luke Misa, Henry Muse, Sam O'Reilly, and we might start talking about John
Cole Hudson
soon. Cole Hudson, sure.
Cole Hudson.
I think Misa, Muse, and O'Reilly, like Misa and Muse for sure at least. Then I'd be comfortable talking about Cole Hudson, because again, I have less questions with Muse and Misa, and I have questions with Muse and Misa. So like, yeah, I'd rather have those two first. I'd honestly kind of lean Muse over Misa. I've soured it a lot on Misa as of late. I've watched some of his end of season tape and a lot of concerns. But he's still one of the best accelerators in this draft. For me, a better accelerator than Pettersson, on top of having the level of playmaking that I like to see. He's able to slow down the play. His brain is at the same pace as his legs. For me, he's the better Lucas Pettersson. So those are the two guys I consider next.
I do want Cole Hudson at 40. Pick your guy at 39 and pick your guy at 40, but I want Cole Hudson at 40. I put my foot down here because the upside with Cole Hudson is massive, and both David and I have him in our top 32, and we're running out of players that have been ranked in our top 32s as a scouting team as a whole. So we're going with Luke Misa at 39, Cole Hudson at 40, Henry Muse at 41, Sam O'Reilly at 42. Jordan, could you talk us through his game a little bit, because he took strides this season, didn't he?
Yeah, I can get behind him. Well, I'm probably the highest on him out of anybody here. So that would be fine for me. Look at a player who, look, it's obviously, like I talk about trajectory and progression throughout the year and everything. Obviously it wasn't as of a steep slope as Iginla and Seneki. Like obviously he's not that player, and but as he went along, like he's so dependable. He's just plays down the middle. He's got good size. He competes really, really well. Sure, he was centering Easton Cowan, who obviously just had an incredible year. But I look at Sam O'Reilly and I see a guy who could have a huge D+1 season, like similar to Cowan. Just a lot of projectable traits. Like I don't have as many. I think the only questions I have are is the skill that great, but everything else, like I see an NHL player here, and when we're in the 40s, considering in a given draft only about 45 to 55 skaters actually play 200 or more games, I see a guy who could probably play 200 games in the NHL, and we're getting close to that spot. So I think he's got to be somewhere in the 40s.
As a big Sam O'Reilly fan, I will say Jesse Pulkkinen should be the next pick. I think we've already slipped him down a decent amount, and I think that like he's way too unique a prospect not to take a shot on. I'd be surprised if a team doesn't take a shot on him in the first round. Like he's got contender written all over him. He's got high upside. He's got a decently safe floor. You know him better than I do, Sebastian, but I've watched a decent amount. I put out a full video on him on YouTube. Like I know this guy fairly well. Yeah. I'm sold on the potential here.
He's really.
I'm fully happy with it. He is, yeah, but he's wild. Like the range he has, I think his development upside as an offensive defenseman is really intriguing. I think I've soured a little bit on the fallback game as a defensive piece. And his actual defensive impact, which is one of the reasons that he's fallen down on my personal board, and that my range for him goes down to 45.
Same
but
here.
we're right there now too, at the bottom of his range. So I'm very happy plugging him in. I know Annie was very much nodding her head at Jesse Pulkkinen in this slot. So let's plug in Pulkkinen at 42. Are there other names apart from Sam O'Reilly in contention here at 43? I'm looking at my personal board. Tanner Howe would be an option. Lucas Pettersson, I'm on board with in this range. Like I think that there's enough speed, there's enough skill, there's enough of a defensive fallback game. I'm not against it. I would probably want Sam O'Reilly over Lucas Pettersson from what I've seen of the two players.
Already done.
Okay, then we'll do it that way then. So we'll lock in. Sorry, yeah, David.
Where did Seth have Pettersson?
Also first round.
Okay. I'm happy.
Yeah,
that's all I needed to hear.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, you're not all alone on an island there with Pettersson. But I have doubts. But we'll lock in Pulkkinen at 42, Sam O'Reilly at 43, Lucas Pettersson at 44, Tanner Howe at 45. And now we've got some options open to us. This is basically like the floor is yours type of time in the second round for players with upside. And there's a bunch of them in contention in this range. A couple names, like I've grown a lot on a guy like Yegor Surin as the years progressed. I think that the upside is really interesting there. And maybe in the next 10 picks, we could start talking about him. But beyond that, who are the players that you all want to start banging the table for at 40 range?
Well, I guess I could take my shot with John Mustard.
Yeah.
Mustard has been weird for me because like I got really excited with what I saw from him in my first couple of viewings, and it steadily waned, and then I was like, okay, maybe he can't play his game at higher levels, and then he started adapting, and then the growing pains with that came. So fortunately he's got a lot of runway. He's one of the youngest eligibles in this draft class, and he's finally starting to add those pro habits that you look for while still carrying that dynamism that you are looking for out of him on a regular shift-to-shift basis. I am a little less confident in his fallback game than I was in the past, but as far as it goes to like developing that top six upside, I think he's taking steps in the right direction. And for a player that's this young, who's playing his first season in the USHL, I think that this is a very, very good first step for him. And to get him at 46 is a very good buy low option.
Yeah,
perfect.
Same here. He's good at one thing, and it's walking in and shooting. Like he's just
pretty much
so good at that thing. But he does it so well that I think that you can work with that. And that's
the thing, right? It's gotten better. He's passing more. Like during the playoffs, you can see him actively use his teammates more. It's just I want more.
Yeah. So he's fallen down the rankings a little bit.
I do want to Julius Metsonen at 47.
Who, sorry?
Yeah.
Sorry, I lagged off.
Metsonen at 47.
Exactly. I've gotten more and more confident in his projection as the year's gone on. I know you're not as big as a fan, Luke, but I really like what I've seen from him. He went from kind of this linear kind of Josh Anderson style where he's just skating up the same lane back and forth the whole game to slowing down, accessing the middle, back checking, not with full energy, but kind of like slowing down, finding the right lane to occupy, that kind of thing. He's played on the penalty kill pretty regularly this whole season, and he's just gotten better and better at it. And I've gotten more confident with the hands. Like, his hands actually surprised me a couple times. He'll pull off a move that you won't expect. He's got decent passing, decent shooting. I think he's got a foundation of tools in terms of puck skills that he can work with, and a projectable frame. He can play center, he can play wing. I like him.
He might not be the WHL player that I would be first off my board in this position, but I'm totally on board with you. I've been a fan of his for a while, and a lot of the things that you're talking about, I think, have been present the whole year. It's just taking some time for him to get that success rate up a little bit. Like, he was always a talented playmaker, and that sort of thing as well. But it took a little bit of time for it to shine, I think. But his calling card, and I think the thing that will make, he's probably one of the most, the WHL player I'm most certain will be playing in the NHL in the future in this range, just because he's big and he wins a lot of puck battles, and he does so in a way that's very projectable. So I would have no
it's not all
whatsoever.
strength. Yeah, it's not all strength. There's mechanics, right?
It's finesse. Yeah, he's a skillful retrieval artist, and complemented with. I don't see the offense coming at a high level at higher levels, but I think it's there enough that I don't think he's going to struggle maybe in that regard at the next level.
For sure.
Floor, you're maybe looking at like a David Kampf type player, which is not amazing to hear, but but yeah,
in this range, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, if you get an NHL,
perfectly fine.
I mean, I'm a Leafs fan, so I'm a bit of a David Kampf hater personally. So maybe it's less flattering coming from me than it might be from another person. But yeah.
Well, he was good in Chicago. Give him that.
But
and Justin Poirier.
And Justin Poirier, he was also one that I wanted to bring to the table. But the two other names, apart from Poirier, who is my favorite remaining player on the board, so I'd be very happy locking in the undersized pesky sniper in at 48. But the next two guys would be two USA-based defensemen in Luke Osborne and EJ Emery. I think that projectability would give an edge to Emery in terms of like trajectory and fun factor, maybe edge to Osborne. I know David is a much bigger fan of Osborne's than he is of Emery. So I'm happy putting in like Osborne first, but EJ Emery I don't think should fall outside our top 50.
What does EJ Emery do that Adam Kleber doesn't?
I like Kleber too. I like Kleber a lot too. Like Kleber is like a top 55 guy for me.
It's a serious question. Like, if we're gonna play the apples and oranges game, like after watching both of them for as long as I have, I honestly couldn't answer that. Like, it comes to me where I just say nothing. I think Kleber just brings so much more to the table, and I think that even at this range, like guys like Terrence Smith, Merrick Vanacker, Ollie Josephson, Dean Letourneau all seem like more appealing bets than me than EJ Emery. I feel like EJ Emery's like one of these diamond guys.
Yeah,
I would too. He's more towards the tail end of the second round for me. Yeah, and I like him a lot.
Exactly.
But
he's a great defensive player. He's one of the best kind of shutdown centers in the WHL, but I just don't really see much that projects as well as some of the other guys here. But for me, to answer your question about EJ Emery versus Adam Kleber and what Emery does that Kleber doesn't, for me, it's just create situations where the puck is in control for his team. A lot of the puck touches Eiserman and Stiga and Bednarik and Plan and all those guys got in the offensive zone was because Emery not only stifled the rush, but established possession, made a smart 6-foot pass to a teammate that set up possession. That's the thing that I don't like with Adam Kleber is that he kind of switches off he switches off the gas once the puck is disrupted. But once the puck's disrupted, EJ Emery, what he does is he pounces on it, establishes possessions. He kind of spins off a check, makes a pass, that kind of thing. That I haven't seen yet from Adam Kleber, and that's a difference maker for me. And in that specific element isn't something I necessarily taught. It's really an issue with Kleber about kind of his understanding of how to create transition scenarios. For me, EJ Emery does that fantastically well. He's not just a pure rush defender. He's a player who turns rush defense scenarios into rush offense scenarios really quickly, really efficiently. That I haven't seen yet from Kleber. So that's the difference for me.
Yeah, that's
One
fair.
more conversation I want to sorry, finish up your Emery thought, but
so
go on.
I am projecting them both to their NHL roles, and for Emery, I can see like that maybe like number 3 righty, as in like a number 6, or if you're lucky, a number 4 guy. But what separates what NHL teams would probably like an Emery versus Kleber would be how good Kleber is down low. He's very, very surprisingly mobile, especially like behind his net, at the net front. And he brings that grit and tenacity that I don't think Emery brings as much of. Emery is willing to throw his body in front of a shot, sure, but he gets the speed of the game sometimes becomes too much for him in a way that I don't think is an issue for Kleber. And when it comes to adapting to NHL speed and adapting towards being like that effective transition player, I think that Kleber has more of a ways to go than Emery does, but I think that the transition to pro levels of hockey will become easier for him.
I'm not sold.
I'm happy locking in Kleber at 51. Like I like Kleber a lot. I think that he has a really optimistic projection. I've watched like 4 or 5 games of him this season and was pretty skeptical with the early viewings, but the later viewings I got were just really, really good. I think that he's also a dark horse he picked inside the first round. NHL teams are going to love that profile. I think he's definitely an option in this range. But I do want to bring Colin into the meeting, who's been patiently waiting for an hour and a half at this point. But it is time for goalie talk. And Carter George, who you've been banging the table for all season long, is also my top goalie in the class. So you have some level of support with your cause now that may have lacked earlier on in previous meetings. That said, I like Leanders. I like Kim Saarinen. I like Emil Vinny. A bunch of Nabokov is also awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say
my third. Yeah, he's great. He's so good. But Carter George is likely going to be the first goaltender off the board. And on the one hand, I wanted to hear what is your projection for George? What has his season been like? And where do you want him on our board? Is now the time already? Do you want to wait another 5 to 10 slots? And how much gap is there between him and the next for you?
Yeah, you touched on a lot of the relevant points with this year's draft class of goalies. It is really tight. There's no big standout. George has been my number 1, as you guys know, all year. And I think the U18s really solidified that for me. As for his year, started out very strong, struggled a little bit in the second half leading into the playoffs. But overall, the tools were there. He plays a very consistent game, and he stays my number 1. I will say there is not much of an edge between him and you could say 4 or 5 other guys. And at this point in the draft, I'm expecting some teams will have reached already to grab whoever their favorite is in that group. Whether that's, as we mentioned, Leanders, Nabokov, Yegorov, Morsevich, whoever you like. But for me, I see George, and I say this in a nice way, is a very safe pick when it comes to goaltenders. I see a lot of his skills are very projectable to the pro game, much more than some of his peers. And so that's what sets him apart from me. I think that he'll at least see NHL games. And I can't say that about many of the others in this range. So I see him, as with many of the other goalies, later second round, early third round. If we want to put him in here, if any of you guys particularly love him, I'm happy with it. But I would say 55 onwards would be 55, 64. I'm cool with him there.
Perfect. We'll wait a couple picks then, because I do think we have a couple other skaters that people like in this meeting. So we locked in Adam Kleber there at 51 after going with EJ Emery and Luke Osborne with the 2 previous picks. So 3 consecutive USA-based defensemen. But now we're entering territory of players that you can swing on that are far from guaranteed NHLers who have a variety of really interesting toolkits. I'm a fan of Yegor Surin's. I think that the combination of motor and skill and playmaking ability is really enticing here. But you could go with the opposite end of the spectrum in a way with Maxime Massé, less upside, but is almost certain bottom line checker, right? Like we have a bunch of options here.
I will
we'll
say,
wait on Massé.
I'd rather wait on Massé, but not only that, but I think the next two names after or amidst Yegor Surin should be Marek Van Acker and Dean Letourneau. I've come around a bit on Letourneau.
Okay.
I like him a bit more than I used to. The thing with these big guys is you're looking for things that they can do that don't have to do with their size, right? And with Letourneau, yes, he's violent. Yes, he's physical. Yes, he's a hard hitter along the boards and a good puck battle winner. Obviously, he's playing in St. Andrews in the AAA collegiate level in Canada. Like it's not the highest level of competition, and he's huge. He's going to win those battles. What I was looking for was inside play, lowering his center of gravity, using his kind of center of gravity to bounce off of checks rather than just using his pure frame. That I've been a bit more of a fan of recently. So I wouldn't let him slip too far. So for me, the next three guys should be Surin, Letourneau, Van Acker. If anyone wants to add names to that list, I'm willing to hear it out. But those are the next three off the board for me personally.
I'd also say Caswell. Caswell.
Really? That high?
Like in this range.
I would throw Galvis into the mix too.
Caswell, he has a bit of a swing for sure. But he does basically everything right except for the physical game, which is just not a ringing endorsement, I don't think, necessarily, because that is a big thing. But he's an excellent playmaker. He's pretty decent at the puck retrieval game. He's a good transition player, both using his playmaking and his skating to do so. He's shown he can play really capably in that complementary role after Geeky showed up. So there's a lot to like there, and it's just he will need to put on strength at the next level, both to build that separation speed and to actually, like beat bigger checkers, get to the net front a little bit more. These sorts of things will need to improve, and his physical game will need to improve. But there's pretty much everything else about his game I think is really, really high end. I would definitely like to see him in before the end of the second round for sure.
Jordan, could you talk us through Ben Danford and Marek Van Acker, whose names have been brought up here?
Yeah, I've got Danford a bit ahead of Van Acker, but they're both in this range for me. It's funny, Sebastian, you mentioned, in this range, do we go with guys who have high upside, maybe not as much projectability? Danford is the opposite of that. He is as steady as she goes. It's funny, he's listed at 6 feet, 175 or so. I thought he was 6'2". Like, he looks way bigger than that. He doesn't look like a 6'4" guy, but I thought he was 6'1", 195 pounds. He kills plays. He defends rush well, kills plays in the defensive end. He skates well. He makes some huge hits. He's physical. I don't know how much offense there really is. He actually had more points than I actually thought he did. I just didn't realize. I thought he had 20 points, and I realized he had 33. 1 goal. I do think, though, if he fills out, which I think he will, and grows another inch and everything, you're looking at your bottom pair, PK2 guy, steady in zone defender, and he's going to play some minutes, and you don't really have to worry too much when he's out there on the ice. Your team probably won't score, but you probably won't get scored on either. So that's kind of why I like Danford.
Danford's, I don't know how else to describe him other than a straitjacket. He just removes all of your options. You just can't, he'll neutralize your stick while neutralizing your hands with a hit. The layering of stick and body and checks, the way that he kind of just shepherds guys to the boards consistently. He's a really good rush defender and a really good in zone defender. Once he kind of pins you to the boards, you can't do anything. You just can't get out of his grip. I think that still has its value for me. So I'd be fine with Danford here.
Yeah, if he had the size and physical traits that Charlie Elick has, he would be right up there and maybe a bit higher than Elick, I think. But
He'd be higher than him for me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like
if he had that size in for him. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. So who do we go?
52?
Do we do Danford at 52 then? I
Sure,
think that
I'll do
was
that.
a pretty
Yeah.
that's a pretty strong argument.
The way I put
think
it for
Dean
the next
Villeneuve would be
three,
a really interesting next one.
I was actually going to say the next three for me, I think would probably be Van Acker, Sura, and Letourneau in that order. Danford.
Yep,
That's how
I'm happy with that.
Did you lose me there?
Does that work with everyone
Okay, cool. We're good to go.
else? All good. Oh, you're back. Before we lock that in, are there any other like quick 10-second arguments for anybody else in this range?
I guess Topias Heinonen would be somebody I would throw in the ring, but I'm cool with taking him later.
That's a bit later.
I'd wait
for
a
me.
bit.
I know Andy's a big
Yeah.
fan. You will have
I'm glad
your
I
chance
finally
to
got
bang the
someone.
table. Yeah, but I think right now we still have some players that have significantly more upside and with like a similar chance of hitting compared to Heinonen. But do we start talking Clark Caswell at this point? I know that Luke is a really big fan, and is there anybody else willing to make an equally large, like big argument for a player apart from Luke for Caswell here?
I can take like Caswell Galvez, but that would be the one I throw in the ring. Galvez is just somebody who I think has all the offensive tools in the world, but he has these momentary lapses of judgment that just make you shake your head, groan, and wish you were watching somebody else. I think that as he develops and as he adds more physical tools, rounds out his frame, and just gets more confident and more comfortable playing his style of game, there's a lot more to look forward to, even if it's just as like that puck moving number 4 option. I think that there's a lot to like, especially considering he's already playing against men in Czechia. So yeah, I'm a fan. I have him a good deal higher than this, but I can understand why he's stuck at 57 here.
So I do have
Perfect.
a couple things, a couple prospects I'd like to talk about real quick, just to make sure that we include them in this category. I've kind of slotted them in here, but that's subject to change, obviously. For me so far, the way the conversation is rolling down, I think Caswell and Galvis are the next two off the board. We've been talking about them for a while, and I think that those are two interesting options here at 56 and 57. I think we can't slip too far on Leo Saline Valenius any further than this, and I think we're kind of making a mistake. I know he has his questions. I don't know.
I don't know.
I have him in my 4th round.
I have him at like the very, very top of my 3rd round. Like I'd be very okay with him slipping a little bit further into that top of the 3rd round, because I also do think we have some other names here. I think Carter George, this is now the time. I think beyond him, Brody Zemer would be a player I'd be looking at before Leo Saline Valenius. Really projectable, probably just a bottom 6 checker, but just a true line elevator. Like, he makes his teammates better, and a contending team's probably going to snap him up, maybe even in the late 1st round. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, he's the captain of the NTDP program. That's likely going to be a decent factor, especially considering just how vocal the leader he is on the bench. He'd be a player I'd also want in this range. Those are my top 2 remaining draft eligibles here, and then Ryerson Leanders is right behind there, as well as Ilya Nabokov. So I'm sure we're going to have a bit of a quick fire round of goaltenders.
Yeah,
Yes,
I will say Terrence
I'm happy with Smith as well.
Yeah,
offensive ceiling.
I had him down to 58. Yeah, I have him down to 58. I also think that it's not the offensive ceiling is high because he's so smart. His defensive ceiling is also pretty decent. It's not as high as the offensive ceiling. He does need to work on his skating. Again, that can be fixed. I think that that's not as big of an issue as that was in, even 5 or 10 years ago. Development teams have gotten really, really good at improving skating mechanics. He does need to fall to the right team, but I think Terrence Smith could be a very, very good second pair defenseman if he develops well. He's got the intelligence, he's got the awareness, he's got the pre-planning, the anticipation, all the mental cues that I'm looking for in him, the scanning ability, all that. Like he understands how to take in his surroundings and make the right choice, which is what I look for in defensemen. So,
and he's doing it
58
as a
for me is
rookie
great.
too.
Yeah, like he's good at what he does. And he's good at one particular thing, a couple of particular things, but all of them have to do with how he processes a game. So I don't have many concerns with him. And if his team can improve his skating, like I think this is a great choice of a prospect. So I have him down at 58. I have Carter George at 59, Brody Zimmer at 60. Is that fine by everyone?
That works well with me. Do we slot in another 2 goaltenders at the end of the second round, the last 4 picks? Because I think both Leanders and Ilya Nabokov have enough proponents here. Like, at least for me personally, I think those are 2 undersized goaltenders, sure, but mechanically sound who project as solid NHLers. I think the upside's perhaps not quite as high as a player like Carter George, or even looking at players like Emil Vinny or Kim Saarinen, who I've actually liked a decent amount in some late season viewings. But those are the 2 goaltenders that I would quite like to still have in our top 64. And I think that only having 1 or 2 goaltenders in the top 64 would be a little bit questionable, because this is a goaltending class where everything is very tight, and having Carter George as the sole like recipient of the top 64 goaltending award would I don't think be quite ideal for this draft class.
I'm happy to see either of those guys in this range. I'm glad to see the Ilya Nabokov train gain some momentum here. It's probably, besides Trey Augustine, the most fun I've had scouting a goaltender. Crazy year for him between making the KHL and winning Rookie of the Year, winning playoff MVP. So if there are enough proponents here, I'm happy to have him in our top 64. With Leanders, as you guys know, I'm a little bit lower on him than some other people. That doesn't mean I don't like the goalie. He's, I think, my number 4 goalie. And both you, Sebastian, and Hadi seem to be quite high on him as well. So again, I'm not going to push back on that too much. Like I said, the lines between these goalies are so close that if you guys want him in there, I'll give my seal of approval on that as well.
I'm happy giving the edge to Nabokov, though.
Yeah, I was going to say Nabokov has the edge for me now. Even I've been, I've been a big fan of Leanders all year. I still like what I saw from Ilya Nabokov, especially in those playoffs. I mean, just fantastic performances. Being able to step up in big games, he plays a way that I don't see as projecting well with his size. He kind of plays like a bigger goalie than he is. But I really like the way he plays. I like the mechanics of his technique is really good. I want to see some improvements in his mobility, but I think that'll come with time.
For a smaller goalie, things he does really well serve him well. He identifies positional reads really well and gains depth on shooters. His hands are out in front of him. He tracks pucks well. Those are the things that I look for in smaller goaltenders. And speaking of smaller goaltenders, I mean, all 3 of our guys here are all 6'1" or shorter. So, yeah, I think we may have a bias against size, for size. Who knows? But those, to me, I would agree, are 3 very talented goalies and guys that I'm happy to have in the top 64.
Perfect.
Cool.
That will wrap up the top 62 then. So we have 2 final spots here to wrap up our second round. Who are you all going to bang the table for in these 2 slots?
I'm going to throw my hat with Annie here and take 2 Finns. 2 guys I've been a big fan of for a large majority of the year. In Heikki Ruohonen and I just said his name. And I've already
Topias
Huninen, yes. If there was one person that I could throw into the ring as well, it would be Noel Franzen as well.
Yeah, he's my next guy.
I think that
makes sense.
He's like one of the last good top 4 defensemen I think that we have outside of Danilo Stinkov. That would probably be my next pick. I know Stinkov. Yeah, I've cooled as well. He wasn't my first round at points in time this year, but for a guy that has had to play in the NL, which is a very, very tough league, despite being almost not eligible for this year's draft class, I think that there is a really, really, really long runway with him that he has shown me enough to be like, it could work. Everything could just go in place with him. I'm a fan of his game. I really like his transitional play. He knows how to make the first move out of the zone, which I'm a big fan of. It's just he doesn't have the surrounding skill set yet. I think a lot needs to come. But I just have faith in him. I don't know. That's how I would put it.
Like
I
both
will
the
say, I'm
regional and
astounded to hear you
director
not
ranges
bring up.
for Stankov kick off at 70.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm astounded not to see you bring up Matvey Graydon, David. Him and Adam Yeko would probably be the last two I would have like really truly in my top 64.
Yeko's behind.
I know
a
Luke,
couple
you're
guys,
I know you're a big Yeko hater, but
it's not so much of a hater.
I know where you're coming from.
I'm just realistic. I feel like I think people just get really, they just see it's like, oh, 6'5" center, he's going to be a huge force in the NHL. But like realistically, how many 6'5" centers do we have in the NHL anyway? Like there aren't really like.
Also, he's more of a winger.
Like he does exactly. Like there's just a lot of the things that people want out of him. I just don't think are realistic to expect. Like it's just like he doesn't really play that kind of rugged defensive game that people want. He doesn't really like. He's got a good shot, but he doesn't create a ton of opportunities. Like I don't see this kind of two-way thread that has him as high as the first round. I mean, my next two WHL guys for sure are Josephson and Mercick, who I think both have. Like Josephson does actually play that game. Like, but he just exactly to be like 5'11". But Mercick is complete opposite. Just very fun, high-end offensive tools, good skater. Those two interest me a lot more than Adam Yeko.
I was going to say, I forgot about Thomas Mercick. He should be the guy here. I think he's proved enough this year that he's able to take the reins of this team. When Caden Lindstrom was out, when he got some more opportunities, I feel like he upped his ante a couple steps and really kind of showed his half-wall power play ability, his versatility offensively, shooter, passer, handler. He's got a lot to work with offensively. So for me, I think Mercick is a great shout as our last pick of the second round. Yeah,
he went super under the radar for most of the year with Basha, Lindstrom, even like McKenna really took up a lot of space from him. But he's like, he's scored at a really, really high rate to finish the season. I'm not like higher than guys like Caswell that we had ranked that high. Like I think he even scored at a higher rate than Marquez, or similar rate to Marquez, if I'm not mistaken as well. There's a lot on the table offensively for this kid, but he doesn't have the surrounding abilities that match up with those guys higher up. But
Perfect. That wraps up the second round then with Noel Franzen at 63 and Thomas Mercick at 64. At 65, Annie, please kick off the third round by introducing Topias Hina to the mix.
Yeah, I think, Hyninen is like analytical darling because his playmaking stats are really, really good, but I think he projects to be like bottom six player. His motor is really high, and but I think there's some untapped playmaking potential that didn't translate to Liga production this season. But I think he plays real quick game that could work quite well in the NHL.
For sure. I would also bang the table for Marseille. I'm not a fan of him, but this is the lowest I'd be comfortable with him. My range for him is 45 to 55. I still, even though he doesn't scan, he doesn't really do much of the translatable things on puck that I like to see. He's a good off puck. He's got a good off puck work rate. He's got really good playmaking when the option's in front of him. I do need to plug his name in here, and he separated himself from Raoul Bollard for me, who I've kind of soured on. I see more as kind of a 75 to 85 range player. So, yeah, Marseille next for me personally.
Perfect. Let's plug in Maxime Massé then at 66 overall. And I would say that the next 2 Europeans off the board from my side of the pond should then be. I don't mind the order too much, but Heikki Ruohonen and Leo Salin Valenius. I think this is about where the drop stops with LSW. He's a very two-way defenseman, certainly inconsistent in his decision making, but the tools are still quite good. And I think that this draft position already makes it quite vocal that we have our fair share of doubts as an overall scouting team.
I think I need to put the flag for Matvei Gridin at this point. I think he's going a little bit too far. While there's a lot of question marks around how he's producing and the fashion that he kind of plays the game, he's still got like a really, really next level offensive sense for the game. I think that with the fact that he's got to go to the CHL next year, because I think he's made it clear that that's what he wants to do at least 1 year. He's got a bit more time to flesh it out. And then while I think it's a good decision because I don't think he's NCAA top 6 ready now, this feels like a guy that can really, really hit his stride in his D+2, D+3, where everybody's like, oh, wow, where'd this come from? He just needs to build a bit more of that fallback game, a bit more of that surrounding game, and just get more physically involved. And I think that you could potentially look back at this saying he's a top 6 forward. Why did we have him so low? I really am just a big fan of what he brings to the table.
Yeah, so the way I have it playing out after Marseille is LSW, Heikki Ruohonen, Matvei Gridin, Simon Zetter, Camille Bednarik, Ole Josephson. Do we have any objections to that?
I put LSW at the bottom of that list.
Of course you would.
Yeah, of course you would. He's in your fourth round. I want to also ask Colin though. Does Emil Vinny go somewhere in this range?
I could see it in this range. I prefer kind of the late 70s, early 80s, but again, where this is a range where if you like a player, you can take him there. So if it's somebody that you've watched a fair bit of and you enjoy, I can see him in this range as well.
I just kind of wanted to hear your take on him. Keep posted with your top remaining goaltender on your board.
While we have Colin on the phone, I would like to ask about Gidloff, who I've also heard a lot about, maybe even earlier than this.
Yeah, so that's another interesting goalie that we've been kind of informally chatting about for a little bit now. He was a guy that initially kind of caught my eye with being 6'6", and he can actually skate. It's always a good thing for the goalies you're looking at. Again, this is one of those guys that I see one specific team when they really like him is going to grab him earlier than wherever we have him ranked. He is great at a number of things. He's got good hands for his, not for his size, but we saw some guys last year who were bigger who didn't have great hands. He reads plays well, but he is pretty limited in his lateral play and his positional depth, his reading. So he's not the guy that I'm as high on. I could see him in the top 100, certainly, maybe in the late 80s to 90s range. But he's not somebody I'd be considering at this range right now. Did you have any takes on him, or is this just out of curiosity?
Pure curiosity.
Fair enough, yeah.
I also wanted to ask about Evan Gardner while we're at it. To both of you, Luke and Colin. He's been pretty interesting this year, right?
Yeah, he was a goalie that I tracked a fair bit early on and fell off my radar a little bit as the year progressed. Obviously playing on a very strong team. He's one of the guys I've marked down for kind of a later round target. He's not somebody that I think I'd be looking at for this top 100 as it stands. Do you have any takes on him, Luke?
I would not purport to be an expert on goaltending. So I just am not as confident in my evaluation of goalies as I would be for most other skaters. So especially just knowing how difficult it is to get one to hit, especially this early in the draft. I would not. I have no comments either way.
For sure.
I would not be confident.
He's
in
in
my
a handful of goalies at the end there with guys like Dawson Cowan and Kirill Zabrubin that I could see a team taking rounds 4 through 7. I would say, solid pick for where you get them.
As a rule of thumb, I'm
looking at the
not
ranges.
always super confident on Canadian goalies. But
Yeah.
they're
I would
so
agree.
way.
They're not easy to project. It's different hockey for sure. I'm just looking at the ranges for both regional directors. From what I see here, Automieco seems to be coming up. We're at 72 right now. Would you be comfortable, Luke, having him right after Ole Josefsson, or do you want a gap there?
Yeah, no. I think that it would be. I think we would be a little bit mistaken not to at least give some credence to his physical tools. I mean, they're there. He
For
is
sure.
big, and he can skate pretty well for his size.
That is about
this is
it,
true.
but
Yeah.
these are true things
it's there.
about Automieco. Yeah, 100%. I'm looking at also some kind of more out of the box leagues, BCHL. I'm looking at Jack Pridham as a potential option soon. He's been pretty impressive as of late. My late season viewings on him have been more and more impressive. I've been more and more sold on his ability to leverage his physicality into high end kind of sequences. David, you watched a decent amount of him. Give me the rundown on Jack Pridham. Like he's projected to go through the US route, right? So yeah.
Yeah. I just have a hard time extrapolating any more than bottom 6 third line energy guy in him. He plays a very, very, very mature game. Like for the BCHL, the amount of habits that he already has in place and the amount of offensive talent that is here, all leads me to believe that this is a player that is playing above his weight class or under his weight class. Above his weight class? He's too strong and too
Above
big
his
and too
weight
good for this league. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have him a little further down, but I see the appeal. He's very smart. He's bringing decent size. I just have like third line scoring winger like labeled on him. I can't see more. I can't see less.
That's amazing value in
For
this
sure.
range of the draft,
Yeah,
which I think
exactly.
is a testament to the value with Pridham, and he's off to a very good program as well with Boston
BU, yeah.
University, which certainly helps. And one other player I've liked almost as much as Pridham on that USA side of things would be Javon Moore, a really big, physical, rangy player with a decent amount of skill. Definitely a long-term project. He's going to need 4 to 5 years at least, but he's committed. I forget where exactly. Is it like Minnesota, Duluth or something? Yeah, Minnesota.
No, just
exactly.
UOM. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have reservations about Moore. He's so risky. Like even in this range, I would be more confident taking someone like Ustinkov, McMorrow, Trafford, especially Alex Zetterberg, who is also going the American route.
Zetterberg's fun.
Yeah, it's just that I have very, very strong concerns with Moore's hockey sense. A lot of what he's been able to do at the high school level is just by being stronger and being more athletic than everyone around him. And I think that it is reflected in how he has still a ways to go, even in his USHL tape. I did get a chance to look at it because he's only got like 4 games where he played around 10 minutes each. And he doesn't like blow off the page on the USHL level, even to the point where I'm like, at 75, I'm not sure. I have had better USHL viewings from guys like Ilya Protosh that are further down this list. So I think that if you are going to take him, you need to have an unsurmountable amount of confidence in the tools that are here, in the program that he's going to, and that he'll just figure it out. Not the worst bet you can make in this range. Yeah, exactly.
Like I think the big part is how much do you trust your dev staff, because he needs a lot of work. Like his game is extremely raw, but the tools are tantalizing. And I think this is kind of the range where you start considering these guys, because teams are going to try to look for hidden talent that they can kind of develop themselves, that they can turn into high end pieces. Like I think that fits Javon Moore's profile extremely well. For me, I would have him at 75 after Jack Pridham. But are there any other names people really want to bang the table for? I see Veti Väisänen is still being available here on the board. I think that could be a decent option in the next few picks. What do you think, Annie?
Yeah, I think he could be a good option there. I've been going a little up and down with him during the season, but I think his floor is quite safe. He can play physically. He does a lot of simple stuff really well. So 78 looks good for Väisänen.
Fantastic. So I have it playing out pretty more. I want to bang the table for Anthony Romani. I know he's a draft +1. I know he's not the fastest or the strongest. He's one of the most purely creative players in this draft, and I think he needs to go in here. Danilo Stinkov at 77, Vete Väisänen at 78. Are we comfortable with this?
I think that we need to throw Alex Zetterberg a bit higher, if nothing for respect
I would agree.
for Seppu. Because for all of his worths, he's still one of the most dynamic players in the Swedish class. When he came out of the lineup at the U18s, the energy on that team went from a 5 to a -3. It was painful. And he was very, very sorely missed for the dynamicism, the creativity that he brought. And I think he's taking the right developmental path as well. He's going to BU. He's placing himself in a situation where he can get into North American ice as quickly as possible, and really, really adapt his game to the level he needs to. Honestly, if it weren't for his size, I think that there's reason to believe he could have played in the SHL this year. We saw Melvin Fernstrom got a call up for Rebro in the game before the playoffs or for the qualifiers. I think Zetterberg could have potentially gotten that call if he was, not 5'8". But he brings a lot to the table. I don't think that we have a more creative player left.
I fully agree. I'd even plug him in at least above Ustinkov and Väisänen, potentially even as high as 71, like below Zetter. I've really liked my late season viewings of him, especially at the U18 World Championships. Yes, it's a swing. It's a swing where there's a good chance that you're going to miss, but we're at the range of the draft where you make those swings. A reminder, NHL teams typically have draft boards with 90 players on them, and you don't usually reach 80 or 85 on that list by the time the end of the seventh round is finished. This is the range to take your big home run swings, and Zetterberg is certainly that, and he's adapted as well his game over the course of this season. So I quite like to have him a little bit higher than 79 or 80 here.
I would put him over Javon
I would
Moore
say
too.
That's the thing. I would say actually Javon Moore is a more logical big swing to take than Alex Zetterberg. I understand the skill levels
I don't disagree with that.
With Javon Moore, you have high-end tools, and you need to work on the toolkit. With Zetterberg, you have high-end puck skills, decent toolkit, and a lot to work with physically. He needs to be able to compensate for his size. It's okay to be smaller than average. I'm known to favor smaller players. I want to like this kid. He plays small. He evades contact. He doesn't initiate contact at all. He plays around his lack of size rather than finding a solution to it. So I don't know. I still think Javon Moore is a smarter high-end pick, a high-end swing rather than Alex Zetterberg.
Speaking of big,
I'm fine with that.
This is also my range for Vinny.
Perfect.
Somewhere would be great.
Yeah, this is definitely the range for Vinny, and up the
right
same alley of big swing. And since we're just talking about Zetterberg, I just wanted to introduce the name. I'm not going to bang the table or anything in this range, but Max Swanson as an undersized, highly creative, highly intelligent playmaker.
Max Swanson makes me sad.
Tad early for me, but I really like him. Yeah.
He makes me very sad. I'll get into it later, but he makes me sad.
Yeah, we'll get to him eventually. I really want to like him.
If you want me to get into, so he is kind of in the Tarek Periskak situation of he's on one of the best teams he might honestly be on the best team in USHL history. He is on he's like carrying the bus for them a lot of nights, and he's definitely a very smart and intelligent player. But he has like absolutely everything he needs to succeed despite his size. And I think that in the situations that he is removed from the Fargo system, you really see the words come into play. You saw it a bit at the Link, I believe, and I definitely saw a lot of it at the World Junior A Championship, where the U.S. team was heavily favored. That first line had Trevor Connolly and Max Swanson on it, and they placed third, or maybe even fourth, if I'm recalling correctly, because the top line between Connolly and Swanson was just regularly outworked by JOJHL players, BCHL players, guys that they, by all accounts, outskill. But it was definitely more apparent with Swanson that even at that level, size was overwhelming him, speed was overwhelming him, and his intelligence just couldn't keep up. He couldn't make the plays he needed to, especially down low, to take advantage of his high-end offensive tool set. I think that he's still one of like the best playmakers this draft has to offer, but so much needs to go right in his development path for him to become an NHL player. And for a guy that is 5'7" and playing center at the moment, he's not even one of the like a very young option. I have a really hard time projecting him to the NHL in any way.
All right,
Yeah.
I just
He's
wanted
a
to have that
genie stuck in a
conversation
bottle.
at some point.
Pretty much, yeah.
He's stuck in a frame that doesn't work for him. Not with the things that he does. I want to love him. It's just really difficult. I'd start considering him around the 90 to 110 range. That's where I kind of have him.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the regional ranges. Yeah, I'm looking at the regional range just to kind of see where we're at in terms of prospects we might have kind of let slip. Brendan McMorrow, Luca Morelli, other regional Luke Mistelbacher is right in this range for Luke Sweeney. Artyom Shchushnikov as well. Those are kind of the names that come up just by looking down here, sparsing through the regional lists.
Theodore Avramov would be a guy I'd throw into the
any
mix.
banging the table type of picks here. I know Jordan.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I think
Avramov. Like he's a massive raw Russian winger. I think this is kind of the range. He's a really good puck handler, really creative problem solver. I've liked what I've seen from him. I'm not banging the table for him yet, but I think in the next 5 picks, I'd quite like to see him here. I know, Graham, you don't have him. I think he's an HM on your board, but I've liked what I've seen from him so far. And same thing with like Matt Vaisharavan. I think maybe in the next 10 to 15 picks at some point, a lot more questions with him. I think both in terms of upside and decision making, and any on puck upside whatsoever, but he's a shutdown defender who shut down play very well at the KHL level as a draft eligible. I don't want to ignore that beyond like 90th overall here.
I want to throw Herman Troff in the mix. I think that for a 6'3" winger that played and not only played but really held his own at the SHL level, while also having a really effective loan spell in the Allsvenskan, there's a lot to like here. I really mourn that we weren't able to see him at the U18s because he's literally one day over 2006. But I really am a fan of the skill set with him. He brings the size. He's very intelligent, defensively oriented. He can play the body really well and make advantages out of those. I'm a fan.
We'll keep that in mind. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask David, what about Max Plant, who is, besides Swanson, probably the highest scoring player we have yet to rank?
Max Plant is another case of makes me very sad. I just don't think the skating is where it needs to be at this point. And I really don't believe that he would be scoring so much if he wasn't playing alongside Cole Yzerman. I was very optimistic on him early in the year that his penchant for really good stretch passes would carry him over until he can kind of get his legs under him, especially because a lot of his early tape was marred by injury. He was just coming off of one, and it took him a while to get his legs underneath him. I was confident that, maybe there's a little bit more here. It never really came. And I think that even at the U18 level, he was generally suppressed. I don't think he produced a lot in that tournament, but frankly, neither did Cole Iserman. That entire line was a bit of a letdown at 5v5 for me. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was okay, I guess.
Yeah, I would say the other issue with Plant is he just yeets everything at the slot without real much composure or poise or ability to play kind of facilitating or kind of chess-like passes. He's very much a slot passer, and those usually don't really work that well in the NHL, especially at that size. I do want to bring Jordan into this because you haven't heard your sultry voice in a long while. Let's talk about Luca Morelli real quick. I want to hear your thoughts on him because I feel like he should become soon.
Yeah, I think this is his range for sure. I think I had him in 70 to 90, and we're sitting here at in the early 80s. So that checks out. Especially, I think he made a really good point saying that like NHL teams are only their draft lists are much smaller than the actual number of picks in the draft. Well, that's obviously because of resources and other stuff, and there's just you can only spend so much money to to see so many people, and you don't want to waste your time elsewhere, right? But I think at this stage in the draft, like there are no perfect prospects right now. There's no even like safe bets anymore. Like we're at the point where it's like, hey, these people or these players have severe flaws, so we're looking for who has anything that stands out, whether it's standout skill, whether it's standout intelligence, or whether it's standout physical tools. And there's a few guys I have in the OHL. I guess Romani we already mentioned as guys who maybe don't have the highest upside, but they've got like kind of pro size and pro strength and pro physical tools and have a bit of that going. And if you think, well, if you can build onto that, then maybe you've got a player. So maybe kind of the opposite of some of the other guys that we've talked about, like your Max Swansons and stuff like that. But Luca Morelli's one, AJ Spellacy is another, Lucas Fischer is another as well. Like all have big size. Like Spellacy's huge. Like I didn't realize that he used to play football or whatever, but when I watch him skate, he looks like a guy who has run track before. Just based off of his explosiveness and stuff. I don't like that team was really bad this year. I know obviously Liam Greentree put up points, but I feel like there's a lot more like juice to squeeze from Spellacy. 6'3", 210-pound center. Morelli is a big guy too. He's right shot defenseman, 6'3". He'll play at 200 pounds once he gets there. He had way more points than Danford. I don't see like a high end offensive creator either out of that, but he's pretty steady defensively. He's got great frame. He skates reasonably well. He defends well. He's pretty safe. If one of the other traits, whether it's he kind of picks up a little bit of a playmaking element, or whether he steps up his defensive game a little bit, that combined with his size and the ability to kind of skate smoothly, that could really bring him in. That could raise his like pro prospect a little bit. So I would go with Morelli here, and I wouldn't want to go too much further before we get into Spellacy and then one of the youngest players in the draft, Lucas Fischer, is probably another guy I want to get in before 100. But outside of that, Kevin, he's more of the big swing guy. He's not the safest player, but I think those four I'd like to get in before 100. Then after that, I don't have anybody really else on my board that I really.
I want to throw one more name at you in Nathan Villeneuve. Did you rate him at all?
I was pretty troubled by the report of like the reason why he was suspended. That guy, but like, look, he's got bottom six upside. He can fly. He's strong. I don't know. I'm not really sure I've got time for him though. From a non-hockey sense.
Fully understand that. I think we should lock in Luca Morelli. I think we can lock in Luca Morelli here. I think that's a good idea in terms of what he brings to the game and the type of profile that we usually aim for in this range. Fits that exactly. I do want to talk about Brendan McMorrow real quick. I'm a bigger fan of him than David's, and David's a big fan of him. So I do want to talk about him real quick just because he's just so projectable. I really like the way that he engages defensively. He's a really good two-way center. He's played a bit of wing. I've already talked in April about his hand-eye coordination being really good. That manifests itself both in his ability to tip pucks in the net front. It also manifests itself in his playmaking ability. Like, I really like the way that he catches pucks quickly, makes one-touch, two-touch plays to move the puck into better areas. He's really translatable. I don't see much more than a third line center in his projection, but I still think that kind of projection, that kind of safe projection with decent upside, is still worth a shout in this kind of range. So he's my pick for 82, unless someone else has someone different they want.
I don't know if he's a center at the next level, but I mean, even on the wing, this guy is such a forechecking dog. He's he's also really, really strong on the puck, which is very underrated considering he's 5'11" and barely 150. He's just such a force to move off of the puck. And he draws penalties like nobody's business. And I think that he will fit very, very comfortably in Denver's top 9 next year. He's like, as far as like high pace energy forwards go in the bottom 6, I don't think you can get much better than McMorrow and what he brings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. We'll go with that then. The 2 next players that I'd be really interested in would be Spencer Gill and Fyodor Avramov. And Spencer Gill, you have a fairly mobile defenseman, plays with physicality. I think the defensive upside is interesting, but even the on-puck game has really improved over the course of this season. And Rimouski's an organization that develops defensemen in that mold really, really well. So I have some hope with how he's going to develop in the coming seasons. And then Fyodor Avramov, just a big swing on upside and tools. He's going to take a couple of years, but I like him. And yeah, had he already plugged in Raoul Boilard in there as well, I think he was also certainly in the same mix.
I prefer him to Spencer Gill personally. I think he's got a bit more to his projection, works a bit better with what the NHL demands of players. Spencer Gill's very much a QMJHL defenseman. Very linear, very straightforward, doesn't take into consideration multivariable scenarios when defending. Kind of just your meat and potatoes, defend the rush, defend the guy in front of you, get the puck, get it out. But I'm really concerned about his ability to handle multiple variables, because as soon as it's a 2-on-1, a 3-on-1, a 3-on-2, he just kind of gets lost. So for me, that's the issue, and it points to a lack of hockey sense. Whereas with Boilard, it's all hockey sense. Everything he does is steeped in hockey sense juice. Like, it's ridiculous how smart this kid is. But I just don't see the tools there that are decent enough for him to be anything more than a third line center. He's kind of in the same mold as McMorrow, with less intensity, more hockey sense, more intelligence. He's kind of the smarter, less physical version of McMorrow for me.
Perfect.
So that's 83, 84 Spencer Gill, 85 Fyodor Avramov, 86. We finally plug in Luke Mistelbacher for Luke. Give us a rundown on him real quick, just so we can kind of inform our viewers about what kind of game he plays.
Yeah, he's not so much of the big swing, I guess, that you would expect from a lot of the other players that we've talked about in this range. He's a lot safer. He definitely plays much more of a classic kind of complementary game at the WHL level right now. He really fit into that dynamite trio of Caswell, Geeky, and himself, and had a really strong playoffs. Though I don't on the score sheet, though I don't think that's necessarily indicative of how good he is. He's gets a lot of shots, gets to his positions well, makes a decent amount of smart passes to find his more talented line mates. The question is mostly just a very linear player. He's decent in transition, but I think he's more apt to kind of chip and chase. So very kind of simple, straight lines kind of player who you can probably plug in to play in like a fourth line someday, be decent at that. That's kind of where I envision Luke Mistelbacher.
Yeah. Now that I think about it a bit more, I think I prefer AJ Spellacy to Luke Mistelbacher. If that's okay, we can plug Spellacy at 87.
Yeah. He's not much of a home run swing at all. And I think there's many players with higher upside still available.
Perfect. So we're good to go. All right. We're almost done with the third round, guys. We're moving through this. Lucas Fisher, I think, is one of the names I would plug in next. Just a very lanky defenseman. Struggles to kind of make plays with that size. I don't think he's necessarily the best rush defender, even though he has the skating and length. He just hasn't figured out how to use it yet. He's got some decent offense, though. There are some glimpses in his game of like really good stretch passes, really good passes from the blue line where he kind of fakes D to D and then goes to the wing or cross ice, that kind of thing shot. I think he's worth a bet in this range. But is there anyone else that someone would have at 89 instead of that kind of profile player that you're maybe a bit more confident in, that you really want to bang the table for, or do we just plug him in?
Before we jump into that, I just wanted to quickly mention that we did slot in Herman Traff, the pretty toolsy power forward out of Sweden, at 88. But now the floor is at whoever wants to talk here at 89. Who do you want to introduce? I will say just there are a couple players that I know Annie is a fan of that are in this range here, whether it be Daniel Nieminen or I know you've soured a little bit on Atos Koivu, but Saarelainen would be in here as well. Is there a player that you would like in this slot at 89th overall?
Well, those names mentioned, I think I like Daniel Nieminen the most. He's really mobile, balanced defenseman, and I think there's some offensive upside with him as well. He can create space with his good skating, and I'd have him there.
Perfect. Well, we'll go with that then. And would you want Saarelainen in the next couple picks as well, or?
Yeah.
I would.
We'll do them back to back then. Like Saarelainen is a lot of fun. The motor, the intensity. He's not a surefire NHLer, but he's so likable, and I think if he does make it, he's the type of bottom sixer that you just trust on every single shift.
Yeah, and I know he's like really likable in the locker room. He's been assistant captain and captain with the U18 team, so he's got the really good off-ice qualities as well.
For sure.
Yeah, awesome. I think we're heading into the range of like big strengths, big weaknesses. I'm thinking of like Matvei Sherevin, Max Plant, Will Skahan, Christian Humphreys, and also some kind of Ilya Protosh, definitely.
What about Jack Berglund?
Marcus Kiersey would be.
Yeah, interesting one.
Yeah.
Like I know Seth's a decent big fan of Berglund's, and I've grown on him over the course of the season. I don't see much upside beyond fourth line center with him, but I think there's about a 50% chance he becomes a fourth line center, and this is kind of the range of the draft where that's worth a shot. He's really good two-way impact. He's big. He's physical. He moves off puck decently well in the offensive zone to create space for his teammates. He's the type of line elevator in a bottom six capacity. That said, he played a lot better against professional competition than he did against his own age group. He struggled to really not be invisible at the J20 level in pretty significant stretches of the season. But when he was playing against pro competition in the SHL, he was also fading into the background, which is a compliment to his impact there. So this might be a tad bit early, but if we're talking like a back end of the third round, early fourth round, I think Berglund's an excellent bet. So definitely in the conversation. I'd probably put in Shervin a little bit ahead. I think that like he has like number 4 shutdown defenseman upside, and that probably caps out higher than with Berglund. But definitely some players here with lower ceilings, perhaps, that I think we're well within the range now. Perfect. So let's slot in Shervin at 92.
92, perfect. We'll go for that. There we go. I would say Artyom Shchushnikov, Max Plant for me are kind of the next two off the board, personally. I'll speak on Max Plant because I've watched maybe 3-4 games of Shchushnikov versus Max Plant. I've watched a good dozen. Like I said, he has his weaknesses. He's not the biggest, and he's very much a slot-oriented passer. But I feel like you can work with that. You can help him kind of figure out how to open up space, how to play chess on the ice, and how to not kind of rely exclusively on really good off-puck movers, really good shooters to create, right? I think that there's enough there with Max Plant in terms of his pace, in terms of his pure passing diversity, in terms of the types of passes he's able to make to the slot. He doesn't have any diversity in where he passes, how he passes, though. A lot of diversity with that. I think there's enough of a toolkit there in order to kind of build a really interesting player, a really interesting project, give him 4 or 5 years in the NCAA, help him go through his full ride, get his education, and then kind of see where he goes from there in the AHL, potentially the NHL. I could see him very much be kind of a Jack Roslovic, where skates up the ice, makes good passes. It's about it, but it's good enough to play in the NHL. That's where I see him kind of ending up.
And as for Artem Shushinov, I'd love to hear what Graham has to say. He didn't end up ranking Shushinov, but he's a really mobile defenseman who probably grades out better offensively than defensively, but he was playing 7 minutes a night all season long in the KHL as a first-time draft eligible and wasn't really able to showcase the offensive skill too much, but he's really composed on puck. He's never afraid of just reloading when he's like leading a breakout or trying to get a zone entry and just sees that his options are closed. He just is very patient and reloads confidently, tries again, which is definitely an asset in his toolkit that you don't really see in that many draft eligible talents, especially when they're playing against professional competition. I think this is his range, but Graham, what have you seen of him so far this season? Maybe not.
Okay.
But
I watched a bit of him.
Yeah.
If you remember, Sebastian, I actually, I think I put you on
Shushinov. You did indeed.
Back in March, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I look at him and the fear of Bogdan Konyushkov. Like, have you guys ever played time trials in racing games and you can see the ghosts next to you, making the same plays, and like kind of being like an echo of your past? That's how I'm seeing Suchinov and Konyushkov. The way that they move off of each other, the way that they find open ice is very, very similar. They both bring a lot of the same stuff to the table. And if we remember, Konyushkov only really caught traction in his D+3. So you get a really, really good chance to buy very, very low on what Suchinov could be. And I think that at this range, this brings enough promise. KHL ice time, no matter what team you play for at this age, is hard to come by. So for a team that was willing to play him for any period of time for as long as they did, that's a pretty good endorsement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
I would actually plug him in at 94. Will Skahan at 95 for me. I know that we're both not big fans, David and I. He's a very difficult player to watch on the ice. He's all sorts of rough on the ice. He's aggressive. He's a decent skater. I like the breakout passing. Not much outside of that, but at this range, I feel like you got to take a swing on that. He's probably going to be a bottom pair defenseman at his best. I don't see anything more than that out of Skahan, but you're still getting a decent chance of an NHLer here. NHL teams love their big guys who can hit, who can kind of skate and make a pass. So for me,
he reminds me of
still,
Jacob Trouba.
Getting an NHLer at 97th overall.
Like, I mean, he reminds me of
much,
Jacob Trouba's current form. Yeah. I think that's his ceiling. Like,
absolutely,
he plays defense with hit stick on, where he just runs at people. If they deke around him, he throws his hands up and goes, "Oh well, it happens," and he just tries to hit him again. Yeah, that's him. That's Skahan.
That's exactly that.
But to bring Colin back into the mix here, we have two goaltenders that I wouldn't mind talking about in Pavel Moisevich and a goaltender that I've liked a decent amount based off of combination of mobility, tools, and puck tracking ability this season in Kim Saarinen. Could you talk me through those two guys?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was about to pipe up about Moisevich, so you're making my job easy over here. Appreciate it. But this is definitely a range where you're taking swings on guys, and Moisevich fits that bill. Again, another massive goaltender in a good development program with SKA. He's gotten some shots in the KHL. I think those statistics that you might see for the KHL are a bit inflated for him. He played a lot of third periods for them against weaker opponents. But I watched a lot of his VHL playoff tape. Moves well for a large goaltender. His skating and technique, there can be some holes in it, particularly when you are shooting kind of from mid-danger territories on him. And that's something that I'm sure people aren't going to be too big fans of. But again, this is a more than worthwhile swing at 96. Saarinen is one that I think a lot of people are split on. I'm on the lower end with him. Maybe it was just the viewings that I caught. I was never particularly impressed. I caught a couple of his pro league games where he did actually look pretty good. And then he went and played against his own skill level, and he was, average or not as good as I would have expected. So if Sebastian, he's somebody that you quite like, we can put him here. I wouldn't have him here, and I think I have him as maybe my 7th or 8th goalie in this draft.
Yeah, he's your 7th, so it's only Marcus Gidloff that you still have ahead after Moisevich is off the board. I wouldn't mind getting Saarinen in like the first 10 picks of the 4th round, but
Sure.
I'm not banging the table for him just yet. I think if we're talking about players to just slot in pretty quickly here to kick off the final round that we're going to be ranking here, I'm going to just start off with Jack Berglund. We talked about him earlier, not the highest ceiling player, but our Swedish scout Seth Ditchfield is a fan of him. This is definitely his range. Very projectable game. Needs some more consistency, especially against his own age group, but the solid performances against pro competition certainly give a decent amount of room for optimism. Beyond that, are there any other players that people want to start banging the table for? Because we're well within the range of just taking swings. I don't think there's a set like list of players that we need to get in any particular order right now. It is mainly down to enthusiasm and who you think still has a decent shot to be a decently valuable asset in some capacity.
I think Ilya Protas.
I mean, I'm not even I was going to say I'm not even the biggest fan of him, but Andre Koch should be gone. Like he's a good swing to take.
Yeah. Andre Koch this is the range for him. Ilya Protas, I think this is also the range for him, and David has, I think, more enthusiasm for Protas than anybody else in this meeting has left for any other player. So I'm happy just logging him in here at 100 after going. I'd want to wait with Atos Koivu a bit longer. I know Hanny, you plugged him in there yet.
Really?
I have questions. I know Annie, you've also soured on him a little bit in this final stretch of the season, but I have enough questions that I want to wait until like maybe the 10 to 15th picks for him.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that because I think he was quite ineffective in the U20 playoffs with his their best team, and also he was quite invisible in the U80s. So I think his tools are great. He's got a really good shot, but there's just something not really clicking right now. But I think upside is okay with him.
Yeah, I will throw in Colton Roberts' name.
I was, in terms of WHL guys, the guy I was actually gonna, I guess, bang the table for here is Max Curran. I think is
really?
Probably.
Okay.
Well, okay, like he's one of the youngest players in the draft. He's almost a September birthday. 6'3" and played on a pretty god awful Tri-City Americans team this year. He also did not get to play a ton. He only got around 40 regular season games, and Tri-City. It was, like I said, pitiful. So obviously he didn't get any chance to play in the playoffs. He was solid, unspectacular at the U18s, but he's a good transition player. He's a really, really good transition player, honestly, especially for a 6'3" kid. He produced at a very high level for a guy with such poor quality of teammates as well. He's probably the guy that I would look for as one of the bigger swings here. Skill, size, age. There's a lot of runway here, a lot of things that you can definitely work with as an NHL. I would say.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
So
if we're going to talk swings, if we're gonna talk swings, I think Melvin
Max Swanson?
Bernstrom can.
Really? I thought you were going to bring up Max Swanson.
No,
I
honestly,
don't
Max
know.
Swanson isn't on my board at all. I just don't think that I have the confidence to pick a 5'7", not physical, not fast playmaker that got the benefit of having one of the best USHL teams in history to support him. I just don't see it with him.
He was a key
I
part. of the best team in
would want him
I-
in here in this range. From what I've seen, like
Same here.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
same
a
here.
low percentage that he hits, but if he hits, this is a really exciting type of talent.
I mean, what if
It's a
Melvin Bernstrom
low
hits?
chance. Oh my! But
Yeah,
even
I
then,
would say-
what does Fernstrom bring that as dynamic? Like he's a decently
He's got a good-
opportunistic goal
he's-
scorer.
Yeah,
But
but there's enough here that you can work like a good defensive game around him, give him a decent B
No.
game, and you got a good middle 9 winger.
I don't
Middle
think that.
15er.
No,
No, I don't think so.
I don't see
I
it.
don't see an
see
NHL in
it.
Fernstrom at all.
I
I
don't
will
either.
kind of just break down
I-
what we have as the picks here. So Skahan 95, Pavel Moisevich 96. That was to end off the third round. The start of the fourth round so far is Jack Berglund, Andre Kosh, Ilya Protosh, Christian Humphreys, which I plugged in here.
Mhm.
This is the lower end of his range even for me. Max Curran, Torrey Pittner, who I think deserves a mention because everything we've
Really
heard about him is great,
intelligent.
everything we've seen about him in
Yeah.
season. Yeah. Then Max Swanson and Colton Roberts. I did want your thoughts on Colton Roberts, Luke. Is this too high for him? Because I feel like despite the fact that he's kind of a pretty meat and potatoes type of guy, I still see there's NHL value here, right? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it more of his game honestly comes from his transition ability than that kind of meat and potatoes thing. He's not a great defensive
Really?
player, honestly. Like I think he's okay. Like he's fine. I'm not sure that would really be his calling card. I think he's better as a transitional guy. He's good at getting out of the defensive zone using his transitional game, and has got a pretty decent shot. But like, he's not a high-end offensive creator. I don't think he's got tools on defense. I don't think he's like amazing at them. I think this is probably the right range for him. He's definitely also going to go higher, I would say, on draft day.
Yeah.
I would be pretty confident of that.
I have a name
for
to
sure.
throw onto the board too. Jordan, what do you think about Jacob Battaglia?
Oh, I think I'm gonna say Kevin He. Because I think he should go right now. Yeah, I don't know, Patek. Like he's big. He's not very fast.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like the range is probably fine. He's got some skill. He's got a good shot. Kingston wasn't like enjoyable to watch. I didn't watch a ton of him, admittedly, but yeah, I don't know. Like at this point, I think he's probably worth a look. There's another guy, Frasca from Kingston, who could probably go sometime, maybe within our top. Obviously, on our list is 128, right? So probably sometime there. But yeah, no, I think that and his dad was Bates Battaglia, right? From who played for the Hurricanes, so he's got some he's got some bloodlines there. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't play at the ton of pace. He's got offensive upside, good shot. Yeah, I'd be okay, but I'd have Kevin He above him though, because he's a better skater. He's more competitive, and I think that there's more upside with Kevin He.
Perfect. We'll plug in
Yeah,
Kevin
also-
He at 105. I do want to bring in a couple European names here, though, since we've just had a run of North Americans. Kim Saarinen, if you want him in here, this would be the lower end of the range for him, in my opinion. I think we're starting to talk about Marcus Gidloff at this point too, but Colin, that's up to you. And the last two guys I wanted to introduce into the mix, Guillaume Meyer is one player that Seth Ditchfield is a really big fan of, that I think that we should start talking about. He has shutdown defenseman upside. Awesome, even better. Then I think Meyer would be right in this range. And one of the players that I loved at the U18s actually was Mika Jokinen, and that's a player that Annie put me onto in our last meeting, and everything I've seen of him has been really encouraging. Really mobile player, plays with a ton of pace, really high motor type of guy. Maybe not the highest upside in the world, but I could easily see him forge out a bottom pairing role. And he's a bit undersized, but his approach to the game, I think, cuts through that lack of size really nicely. So he'd be another player I'd want to nominate here.
Yeah, and he plays bigger than his body is. I
for sure
watched him a lot in the U20 playoffs, and I think he was one of the most impressive players from the DPS team. Much more impressive than Koivu or even Hemming. So.
Yeah, I thought he was really spectacular too. I have him in my top 64 just because I was so impressed with his U18 tape that I couldn't deny him. It was genuinely one of the best small sample reports that I was able to collect all year. It was a really fascinating tournament.
Could we bump him up
I've
then? Like
kind of lost
Marcus
track
Kiersey?
of Viti Väisänen.
He's up there. We ranked Väisänen at 79th overall.
Oh, 79. Yep. Okay, great, fantastic. I'm glad we didn't miss out on him. That's good.
Yeah, he was in the list twice. I saw that too.
Yeah, exactly. I deleted the second one because I didn't want him in there anymore.
I think it was Una Väisänen that might have been cloned twice.
But just to recap the last little stretch here, we had Max Swanson at 103, Colton Roberts at 104, Kevin He at 105, Mikko Jokinen I bumped up to 106 because we had a decent amount of support there. Marcus Kiersey at 107, Gian Meyer 108, Kim Saarinen 109, and Marcus Gidloff tentatively at 110. Colin, talk us through his game really quick.
Yeah, I touched on him a little bit earlier. I think this is the range for him, Saarinen, and the other guy I was going to mention is Mikhail Yegorov with Omaha. I think the three of them, similar kind of upside for me. I'd have them all in this range. If you want to talk specifically about Gidloff, again, I'll say he's bigger goalie, struggles a little bit laterally, particularly on 2-on-1s and quick developing plays. He can lose his net a little bit, but he does have plenty of tools that make me like him. His skating and technique is actually pretty good for a guy his size. And as I said, strong hands. So the upside is pretty good. And I would say similar to Saarinen and Yegorov, as I mentioned. So all of those guys are in this range.
Awesome. So
I will bang the table for Colin
Ralph
at 111.
Cool.
Very, very useful defenseman. Shaddix isn't the highest level of competition, but I feel like he's going to translate to the USHL fairly well. I like the puck movement, the ability to kind of go from receiving a pass or retrieving a puck to quickly playing it up the ice. Really good at that. Often kind of the breakout down, the D-to-D, which fits really well with the way he plays. I like his game. I think he's worth a pick, and 111 is kind of the lowest end of where I'd go with him. My range for him was actually 75 to 90. He just kind of slipped down there. But I'm comfortable with him 111. We don't need to bump him up. It's just he needs to go soon.
He's also the only person I have seen that has walked into Dean Letourneau and not fallen over. So that's impressive too.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. One other player I want to bring up then here is Viggo Gustafsson out of Sweden, another player that Seth is a fan of. He's a super projectable stay-at-home defenseman. I think that there's a decent enough chance he becomes a number 6 defenseman. I don't know how much upside there is beyond that, but he skates well. He's not a bad puck handler, decent enough in the breakout. Again, very simple, very meat and potatoes. He's like 6'3", 190. Skates well, obviously, and I think he'll have a pretty linear path to an NHL role at some point.
Yeah, I will say though, what direction are we going with defenseman? Because Will Felicio is just sitting right there.
And
do we take that swing right away? Do we wait up on?
He can sit.
Yeah,
there.
can he? Okay, we'll leave him as it is.
If we're talking about swings, this is now Melvin Fernstrom time. I'm open to Fernstrom at this point. Yeah. Like 115 range.
Why not? Right?
there's
Maybe-
some type of upside,
Will-
but hey.
I mean, I'm not
Will
confident in him
Zellers,
either. It's just that
perhaps, would
like
be an option?
I mean, I have very, very little faith in this year's U.S. high school crop outside of Javon Moore and maybe like, honestly, I don't even have him listed, but I have guys like Gavin Uhlenkamp over guys like that. And Uhlenkamp's like 5'7". I don't see him high on this board either.
Yeah.
I don't know. Noah Powell rings a bell to me. I know Seth is a big fan of Eric Berger. I think he can slot in relatively soon. I think Oscar Villette
This is the range.
also an interesting. Yeah. Casper Pekkarinen
Luke,
is
is
also
it Gavin Hodnett time?
Oh, I love Hodnett. I just have a hard time imagining him playing in the NHL. It's just he's really talented, but he just is so small. He just really is such a small guy.
Just a little guy. Just a little guy.
He really is. Like he's just, but I like him a lot. He scored at a very high rate. He's got an excellent shot. He is a very capable transition player. I will go so far as to say that I think a lot of like Adam Yeko benefited a lot from his presence on that team.
He did. He very much did.
Hodnett's not a great playmaker, but he's good. He's good enough. I just have he would be one of my swings for sure. It's just, can you make a guy who's that small, is not good defensively, doesn't have a lot of that kind of toughness, playing above your size game that a lot of other smaller players will need to have to succeed at the high level? Does he have that? Not really. Can you teach that? Perhaps. I don't know. But I have a hard time passing on him because I really do like him a lot. He's one of my favorite guys that I've scouted from the WHL. Just, I have a hard time seeing him make it work.
For sure. We'll wait on him. Worst case, you'll leave him as HM. Yeah, go ahead, David.
For Seth's sake, he has Timur Cole in the second to third round range. So I think that he would be banging the table pretty hard for him.
Yeah, Timur Cole's kind of up the same alley as Viggo Gustafsson. He's decently mobile, pretty big, very meat and potatoes. Played some professional games this season, looked pretty okay in them. Again, very simplistic type of profile, but type of guy that will get an opportunity at some point, even if it's like a 27-year-old getting an ELC in 9 years' time. I think that there's definitely a chance he'll play NHL minutes at some point. Beyond that, one more name I want to kind of throw out there is as a D+1 that Seth is also a fan of, that I've also enjoyed, and I know Luke is certainly a fan of, in Tommaso De Luca. I think this is kind of the range for him. He played well in the Swiss Pro League this season, and I enjoy watching him play hockey. I don't know what the upside is here beyond like a really entertaining bottom six like contributor, but we're talking 117th overall. That is more than worth a swing.
I was so devastated that he stopped playing on Spokane this season. I mean, that would have been just him and Catton looked so good together last year, which is why I think we were so high on him. And just, man, if him and Roulette were able to play with Catton, I think that would have changed a lot of how people view him. But playing a more smaller role in a better league, just, I don't know. But I talked to you earlier about this Sebastian this season too. Like the flashes of what we were seeing last year are still there. He's still got the effort level, the skating, the hands. There's a lot to like. It's hard to see someone not liking what you can see from him, at least turning him into like an AHL player.
For sure. Yeah, he's a bunch of fun. At 118, we'll slot in Atos Koivu. We'll let the fall stop here. We have question marks around him, but he's a good half-ball shooter. He's an intelligent player. he has some level of two-way impact in his game, and I don't think he should fall too much further than this. But Hattie, you then plugged in Will Zellers at 119, Thomas Lavoie at 120, and then I went ahead and plugged in Yuri Tiacek at 121. But talk us through Zellers and Lavoie first.
Zellers is he's still very raw. He does need a lot of work, but I think that overall he's got the tools to make it work. He's a really good playmaker. I like the shooting from a standstill. Once he gets in motion, I don't like it as much, which is a bit worrying. But at this stage, with the hands that he has, I think that there's very much a player here. If you're going to take a swing on a prep school kid, Will Zellers has consistently been among the top prep school guys ranked, and I think that overall there's a good reason for that. He's not the most engaged or intense player. He's not the most defensively reliable player from what I've seen, but listen, prep school tape is difficult to get, and the 4 or 5 viewings I've gotten of him, I've really liked the skills. It's just a matter of how much more he can add to his game. With Thomas Lavoie, though, I've got pretty much a completely opposite projection. I think he's very much in the Viggo Gustafsson, Timur Cole kind of mold of just a very safe, very projectable, and again, just a very QMJHL defenseman where what's in front of him, he can handle. He's got the frame, he's got the range, he's got the decent level of mobility. I don't see a smart defenseman, but those players I've seen turn into bottom pair guys. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case with Lavoie. But I think NHL teams are going to be much higher on him than we are, and I don't think that's going to look good in retrospect. But he's certainly a guy, and we both very much love Yuri Tiacek. I'm glad to see him ranked again this year.
Yes,
he's worth it.
He is. He's undersized, but he's a D+3, and he absolutely lit up the Czech Pro League this season. He was the top scoring defenseman in the entire league with Kladno, which is the organization owned by Jaromir Jagr, which just adds a little bit more fun factor to his profile. But he was just fantastic. He was on the brink of breaking out for the last 2 seasons, and he finally did it this year. And he's a player I want an NHL team to just swing on in the late rounds of the draft and see what happens. There's a chance he never becomes an NHLer, but he could be one of the most fun bottom pairing puck movers in the league if he hits, and that's more than worth a bet in this range. 2 more players on the European side that I wouldn't mind introducing into the conversation would be Charlie Forslund, who came out of nowhere this year. He was on no radar coming into this draft cycle, but he worked his way up in the J18 level, and then ended up playing in Hockey Etan, which is the 3rd-tier pro league in Sweden, with IF Falu, and in 19 games with them, he scored 19 points and 10 goals. He wasn't necessarily the biggest offensive driver, but he was playing in all situations, big minutes as a draft-eligible talent against pro competition, which on its own is impressive. And he's pretty raw and inconsistent and has a lot of growing room and runway still ahead of him. But I like him enough to get him ranked, and Seth is an even bigger fan of him than I am. And the last guy that I know Seth would be banging the table for here is Liam Danielson. Is the top draft eligible point producer in J20 this season, but he has subpar skating and subpar physicality, which does not help his projection whatsoever. And he's very much a perimeter playmaker in how he produces, which is why he hasn't been ranked anywhere high this season, despite the high end production. But somewhere late on our board, I think, has been deserved. And who knows, maybe he's able to adapt at the next level and work around his deficiencies. But I think he's worth a shot. And maybe another worth shot European-wise would be Sebastian Soini, but I'm open to conversations beyond that. And Annie, would you want Soini ranked here, or is an honorable mention sufficient for him?
Both options are okay for me. I was much bigger fan of Soini earlier this season, but right before the World Junior or under 18 in the practice games, I thought he was quite bad. And he's got good physical tools, but I think there's a bit of problem with his hockey sense. Maybe I think he probably gets drafted because of his physical profile, but I'm okay. We can put him in the end of the 4th round, or we can have him as an honorable mention. I actually like Pikkarainen more. I think he's a huge swing, but his physical tools are really intriguing. He's got quite good shot. He can make plays, and he occasionally he likes to hit people. So I think he's kind of interesting package. He's not a complete player yet, but I think there's some really intriguing tools.
And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm kind of agreeing with Hattie what he did on the sheet here, plugging in Gabriel Eliasson as our final pick of the 4th round.
I think it's a good statement.
There is a lot of
that's
issues.
Really...
It's more of a statement than not having him in, almost. But beyond that, there is a ridiculous level of physicality and violence. Like, he is nothing if not physical and violent, and mobility. And he's 6'7", and hey, he's going to be drafted in the top 64 by all accounts. He's going to be given opportunities at the NHL level, likely. And I believe he's coming over to North America next season as well. So we'll see how he adapts to the smaller ice surface. But I'm not against having him ranked right here at the tail end. I mean, the alternatives are like, I don't mind Frankie Morelli. I don't mind Alexander Siriatsky, but they're like honorable mention like level of players as well. So
I think Garris Matejko
I will
would be
say
interesting.
Garris Matejko, I was keeping for my honorable mentions. I like him. He's big. He's physical. He plays really well under physical pressure. He uses mechanics really well. I have my questions about the offensive tools, but if he can be a 4th liner who brings energy and physicality to a bottom line for an NHL team, great. I did want to say about Gabriel Eliasson real quick. I feel like he's going to make the NHL, and he's going to make his team worse. Like that's what's going to happen.
But are we drafting for NHL games played? Because
do
if
we
we
really
are,
want
he's
to
on
be
here.
happy about that? Is that really the 128th ranked player? That's like saying like what? I don't even know what a comparable to that is. It's just like, yeah, there are like several other players on this list. You're all better than him, but oh well.
It's not necessarily better. We're in the range. We're in the range of the draft where I don't like splitting hairs doesn't even quite do justice how like wildly close all of this is at the tail end.
Yeah.
But just to recap a little bit, what we have right now, and we can make edits if people want to like still shoehorn a last player into here. And Colin, I'm not sure if you still wanted to have an extra goalie ranked that we haven't talked about just yet or ranked. But to recap the last picks, we had Yuri Tiachek at 121, Charlie Forsland at 122, Liam Danielson 123, Noah Powell, the D+1 USHL who scored a bunch of goals at 124, Félix Lacerte at 125, Alexis Bernier 126, Kasper Pikkarainen at 127, and Gabriel Eliasson at 128. Do we have adjustments here? But Colin, first off, goalies, are we good, or do you want someone else in here?
There is one guy I'd like to get in there. I'm sure plenty of you have seen him watching the development team, Nick Kempf. I mean, I think he's much better than the statistics would indicate for him. Somebody I've enjoyed from a technical and skating perspective. I think he's got to be in there somewhere. It can be, if you want to have him at the end of the 4th round, that's fine, but somewhere between 118 to 128 in there somewhere is great. But I do think he needs to be on that list.
Perfect. We plug him in at 125.
Sure.
I would also throw Hagen Burrows into the mix. By public viewing, he's probably the best high school player that the circuit has to offer. I can live with him in that 127 to 128 range because I'm not so confident in his lack of pace and his perimeter playmaking, but he's definitely one of the more intriguing and translatable offensive options left. He's like probably he's like one of the last guys on my list, but he's on there.
Yeah. Would you prefer having Noah Powell or Hagen Burrows ranked?
Definitely Powell.
Burrows over Powell?
Yeah. No, Powell over Burrows.
Powell, okay. Okay, cool. In that case, because the range is so close, and we have Lacerte, Bernier, Pikkarainen as the last 3, I think it's better if you leave him for your HMs. Is that okay?
Sure.
Perfect. There we go.
Besides,
Perfect. So all the stuff to do is for everyone to
other,
select. Yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say, besides Hodnet, there's only like 2 other WHL guys I would kind of consider here, which would be Tittleback, Adam Tittleback. He's again like another. He's impressive at the U18s, just solid all around offensive game, but don't see anything special out of him here. And then my personal favorite that I just would like to talk about, I suppose, is Josh Fluker, who I don't think most other people are huge fans, but especially because it's like hard to get behind a 5'11" defenseman with very little to offer on offense. But he's intriguing to me. Just he plays a solid defensive game. He is very good at the things that you need defensemen to be good at, and is not good at the things that are kind of extra. The offense isn't there, but he's a good defender and is a very capable transition player as well. But probably more of an HM for me, maybe.
I just wanted to support you with the Tittleback pick. I had in my viewings of the Czech team, both at the Hlinka and at the U18s, I have like Paul Byron flashbacks with him because he's just really small and he gets on breakaways a lot and he doesn't score on them a lot, but he gets there. So that's a plus for him. He knows how to get open and he knows how to get himself chances. I just haven't seen him very much with Vancouver or, in actual capitalization, but he does work.
Yeah. Perfect. We're at 12 HMs, 13 HMs so far. Anyone else? Are we gonna leave Carson Wetch completely off our board, including HMs? Or...
We'll give him an HM.
This is what I will say about Carson Wetch. It's like he is a dog constantly chasing a car and constantly catching the car. And then what is the dog going to do when it catches the car? Like he doesn't like there's a weird thing to say about him, but he has a lot of energy and he plays with a lot of hustle and a lot of physicality, but like doesn't really do a whole lot with that. Like you don't see him generating a ton of turnovers, at least not from any sort of finesse perspective, and you don't see him generating a ton of high quality opportunities either. So he is going to get drafted, definitely, probably above this position as well. But I just don't see a whole lot of interest for me personally. He has things that NHL scouts will covet. But
how about Owen Allard as an HM?
I don't know. I'm not really sold. Like he's whelmed indeed. He's just. I mean, he's fine. He's just a guy. He's a guy. Like if you're looking for a guy, he's a guy. Like he's. I don't know what else to say about him. He's really not. He's underwhelming.
I'm kind of.
I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of split between my.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how we feel about Tuomas Suoniemi. Do we keep him for HMs? What do we do with him?
Any?
Yeah.
He's your guy. Very whelmed.
Got it.
I feel very whelmed as well.
He's got good playmaking skill, but that's about it. And if he develops, he could be something, could be player there, but it's really big swing, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Landon Resendez, David?
I was thinking about it. For me, it's between him and Artemi Nizameyev, who in Tri-City really, really picked up the rod once Trevor Connolly left for the U18s. I think that despite his size, he was able to really impact the USHL to an offensive degree that I was not expecting out of him. He's definitely like a for-fun player at this point, and I really don't believe that he has the tools needed to make the NHL or even maybe the pro leagues in America. It might just be too physical for him, but he's a lot of fun. And I think Landon Resendez also finds himself in the same niche of he is like Carson Wetch, but a lot more fun. Occasionally he'll make the really high end play, but more often than not, he's skating right past the guy. I don't know. He also has the issue with size. I think he's only like 5'8", 5'9". Both of them are smaller players that I don't really see a lot to be excited with. If I wanted to be safe, I can go Lucas Van Vliet, who has been in and out of the NTDP lineup as of late, but brings like really, really high-end moments followed by 15 minutes of skating around, basically just having his cardio session. But hey, those good moments are really, really good. And I think he brought it a lot at the All-American game. I don't know. I guess for the fun factor, I'll say Nizimayev. I do have him ranked highest on my list of the people left, so I guess I'll stick with him. But
Okay.
We're in that territory where it doesn't really matter.
Got it. Perfect. I think that wraps it up. Let me just make sure.
It does. I think it wraps it up too. Like we've hit a wall here as a group. I think if we want to get in any last honorable mentions, we can always just do that over Discord. And also the people that missed today's meeting will still be able to nominate their honorable mentions if we haven't covered their bases just yet. But that wraps up this meeting. Thank you all for attending and for contributing. Also, thank you so much for all of your work all season long. You guys are amazing. We could not have done any of this without you. So thank you so much for your contributions and all the game reports and the write-ups and the discussions, the debates, and all the meetings as well. Like these are many hours spent staring at a screen, debating over players that play puck on stick with knife shoes on ice. So thank you for attending, and to anybody still listening to this video, thank you very much for listening. This wraps up the draft cycle for our work here at DobberProspects. We will of course be posting our big summative article alongside this this video of the ranking meeting. But me and Hattie are going to be at the draft. Is David also going to be at the draft? Yeah, so 3 of us are going to be represented in Vegas, bringing you some more content and mainly just being able to interact with other people in the public scouting world, which is always fun. But we will be back with far more content next season for the 2025 NHL Draft class, highlighted by some elite talent. Foremost, James Higgins, who is just awesome, and we're going to be giving you a lot of very fun takes about James Higgins because he's awesome at hockey. But that wraps up this meeting and this draft cycle for us at DobberProspects. Thank you so much, and see you next year.